This is a good song, though. Oh, this is a good song, though. We have to skip it, though. We have a video. That sucks. Okay. There we go. Yeah, we're all good now. We're all good. Let me know, how audio sounds. But this video, I don't know how to pronounce their first name, but it is by Tails. I know, big rip. Big ripped. Big rip. Can you go away?
There's a forest on the southwest coast
Okay, now
of
I
Wales
can't hear. Can you wait? Could you guys hear? Let me play it again. Technical difficulties.
People have never
yeah,
heard
you guys
of,
can
and that's
hear, which means perfect.
There's a forest on the southwest coast of Wales that most people have never heard of, and that suits the people who live there just fine, because obviously the rest of the world is a nightmare anyways, so it's kind of like I used to belong to a town where it, for some reason...
Isn't that kind of neat? I don't know what it is, but I like the demonic deer designs. Sorry, a little off topic, but I really like those demonic deer designs.
Ended up in, like, the top 10 places in the world to live, not the world, but the U.S. to live, and I was like, oh god, no. I go back and visit sometime, and it's gotten infinitely worse. Anyways, it sits inside a place called Pembrey County Park in, oh my god, the English need to... Well, not the English, I guess, because it's Wales. No, Wales is English. What is your name? Carmarthenshire? Okay. Anyways, and on the surface, it looks...
Dude, I feel, though, like, the, struggle to speak. Also, Boke finally done the thing with Solaris United faction standing. Oh, with Warframe? Reminds you of, Hugsbees? Hugsbees. Why does that sound familiar? Oh, his voice. Okay, I thought you were talking about the little, guy right here. Like, his little, you know, I don't know, just, the deer thing is, kind of neat. I think it's a neat design.
Like the kind of place you would take your family on a Sunday afternoon. There are walking trails through tall pine trees, a stretch of award-winning golden beach that runs for 8 miles in either direction, a dry ski slope, a miniature railway, and signs pointing you towards the cafe. It is the sort of place where people throw sticks for their dogs and let their children run ahead on the paths, and really nobody thinks twice about it. But before we go any further, there's something you need to understand about Pembrey Forest. Something that the tourist board does not put on the signs, and something that changes the way you look at every photograph of the woodland once you know it. Some of the people who have reported the most disturbing experiences in this forest had never been there before in their lives. They had not read about its history, they had not been briefed by a ghost tour operator or primed with local legend. They were walkers, hikers, and campers who simply drove to a county park on the Welsh coast and found that something in those trees did not want them there. And when they described what they...
Okay, that... I don't know, that whole premise, I feel like that makes this a lot more believable, to be honest, already. Because you always find that supposedly the most haunted places in America, the most haunted places in the world, the most haunted places in Europe, etc., etc., it always goes based off of the same thing, which is they always marketed it. Which, nothing entirely wrong with it, but it does, a lot of the stories that happen afterwards, especially, it kind of discredits them in a way, because it's well, now you're just kind of attracting that, you know? And a lot of it's gonna end up being false, even if, what, got you the popularity was real, you know? So, already good. Also, to be fair, you can't say half of some shit in England, let alone the whole of Britain. I probably wouldn't either. Knowing how I do with speaking and pronunciation, yeah, no. 100% not. Guy dubbed over how it's made. Oh, the abridged how it's made, essentially, is how you remember, Hugsbees. Maybe that's why the name is familiar. Because of how it's made. Makes me believe in it less, unless it's Mothman or something like that. Yeah, exactly. Normally when you see it marketed, it's more of I don't know, a place LARPing to be haunted. They're LARPing haunted. They're not actually haunted. That's what it feels like. You sent me the playlist before? Oh yeah, then most likely I have. Yeah,
felt, what they saw, and what they
that makes
smelled, their
sense.
accounts matched documented historical events in the forest that are genuinely difficult to explain away. We will come back to those accounts, obviously, because that's why we're here, but to understand them, you need to
Ooh,
understand what happened here, not just
I feel
once,
like I'm
but
covering him. I
over
feel
and
bad.
over again across 3 separate centuries on the same small stretch of land. Because Pimbury Forest does not have one tragedy buried in its past, it has dozens of them stacked on top of each other, pressed into the same sandy soil, stretching from the 1600s all the way to the middle of the 20th century. And every single one of them left the dead behind. I guess you could say they were left for dead. Okay, anyways.
Oh, but then I'm in the way of all this stuff. That was a beautiful cut, beautiful snippet. I don't know. I feel like I'm in the way of him, and I
The
feel
coast
kind
of
of bad.
Pembury is not merely old in a historical sense, it is ancient. The wider, good lord, Carmarthenshire region carries evidence of human settlement stretching back to approximately 2,500 years, with Iron Age hill forts on the high ground
I
and
tiny.
Norman castle ruins marking later chapters of occupation, whose stonework has been absorbed so thoroughly into the landscape that most visitors pass within yards of it without recognizing what it is. Roman era artifacts associated with shipping activity have been identified in the sands along this stretch of coast, fragments of a trade network that predated the formal wreck records by well over 1,000 years, and the Civil War period
You
left its own
know,
material traces in the same layers. The ground at Pimbury, in
why
other
is it
words,
always the coastal places? Why is it always the coastal places or the places that are near the coast that always become the most fucking haunted? Why? Is it because like like I guess when humans like before like way back when everybody's like discovering these continents, right? Like, and everything like that. It's like we land there and we decide we're going to commit the most heinous shit and it ends up being haunted. You notice that? Or is that just something I'm observing? A lot of woodsy places are pretty haunted too. Well, depends on the woodsy place. Because there's a difference between a woodsy place being haunted and a woodsy place being haunted, Because if you think about it, all foresty places feel haunted. Because, I mean, like with everything going on, it's kind of, yeah, no. It's, yeah, I lost my train of thought. God damn it.
words,
But
was
yeah,
accumulating
it's
its
like
history
that.
long before the first documented shipwreck, long before the first lantern was raised by wreckers, long before the first factory was built on the
My
dunes.
brain, my
So
poor
it
brain.
was not a
I
beginning,
had too many
it was
cups of
just a
coffee today.
continuation. The coast of Carmarthen Bay, that one's a little easier to say, has been in use as a shipping
A little
route since
easier.
its, well, I guess at least.
Okay, I'm just saying, based on the way he's saying these names, I wonder how many takes it took him to, like, pronounce these names. I know for a fact, if it was me, I would have had to cut out at least roughly 5 to 10 minutes of me trying to say it, and then another 20 minutes of me trying to look it up and then listen to a video of how it's pronounced. Like, genuinely, I feel like that's what I would have to do. I'd have to cut out that much. So, like, I could only imagine, like, I'm just curious. Just gotta know. I gotta
Roman
know.
times, and for
How
almost
many
as long
takes?
as ships have sailed it, ships have died on it. It sounds like a wonderful place. The beach that runs alongside Pembury Forest is called Seth Seaton, which I'm sure there's going to be somebody who says I said that wrong, but that's actually how you allegedly say it. And it stretches for
You know
approximately
what? Sometimes it's the effort that counts about saying it, not whether you said it right. Sometimes it's the effort you put into trying to say it.
8 miles between the town of Buryport and the west, well, to the west, and Kidwelly to the east. From a distance, it looks like a paradise. The sand is the color of pale gold. The water runs clear enough in calm weather to kind of earn it a prestigious blue flag status, and the first beach in Wales to receive that designation. And on a summer day, with the light slanting in from Bristol Channel, comparisons to the California coast are not entirely ridiculous. But that is a flattering lie, the beach tells you from a distance. It's a hot chick that you met up with at the bar who is definitely going to stab you in the middle of the night, and you're going to wake up dead. Well, you're not going to wake up dead. You can't wake up dead.
No, but for real though. Oh my god, that you know what? I need to figure out how he thinks. I need to dissect this man's mind now. You know what? I went from like, okay, I'm curious to how you formatted this like video. I'm curious how this video is to like, you know what? I love how you said that. It's a lie.
But you're gonna be dead. But as you get closer to that beach, the story will change. Beneath the surface of Kivanshiden, that's right, I rage baited you with that first pronunciation, the sandbanks shift constantly with the tide, creating invisible traps.
Did you though? Did you rage bait us? Chat, do we feel rage baited? I don't know. Maybe it's because I I've never been to Wells. I've wanted to visit Wells before. I've never been to Wells. So maybe it's just not personal enough.
In the shallow water that extend far out into the bay. The combination of those shifting banks, the powerful tidal currents of the Bristol Channel, and the way the bay funnels southwesterly gales straight into the coast made this stretch of water one of the most consistently lethal on the entire British Isles. Sailors and maritime historians over the centuries gave it a nickname that tells you everything you need to know about what it did to ships that came too close.
Was like a
they called
Bermuda
it
Triangle?
the dustbin of the Atlantic. Formal records of shipwrecks on the Kivanshiden began in 1668. From that date until the present day, around 182 vessels have been officially documented as lost on these sands. But local historians and the Community Heritage Archive at Pembroke County Park estimate the true total to be well over about 300, with the majority of older wrecks never formally recorded, simply absorbed.
The Dust Bowl? Yeah, well that's why I'm like, why did they call it the Dust Bowl? Like, where did dust come from? Was it because of the wind and the sand? Was that why? So that's why I'm like,
the sand and forgotten with time, along with everyone else aboard them. 300 ships, centuries of sailors.
Yeah, they get stuck in the sand and they get like, okay, yeah, that makes sense then. Never mind. Must have been the wind.
Lying beneath the beach that sits directly alongside the forest where people walk their dogs on Sunday afternoons. That is the foundation, but the foundation is not what haunts this place. Here's where the darkness of Pembroke's history stops being a matter.
Well, the one in America was caused for a different reason, but yeah, probably similar-ish. No, not similar-ish. The one in America is known for that because it's literally just dirt. It's just a big bowl of dirt. So that's like, okay, that makes sense to call it a dust bowl. But they were talking about off the coast. Like the waters off the coast. So how can you call a watery area a dust bowl? But because they mentioned like, oh yeah, like a lot of these wreckages get stuck in the sand and that kind of stuff, I'm like, okay, that makes sense. Like, if they're getting stuck in the sand and it's like they kind of get forgotten until like they're eventually found again, that makes a little bit more sense. But initially, I'm like, what? Excuse me? Pagan, how you be? Welcome on in. We are currently watching a video about the best argument for an actual haunted forest. And so far, I'm digging it because it sounds like this forest, it doesn't have marketing for it being haunted. It's nothing like that. It's simply just because of all of the stories and everything. And right now he's going through like the history of the area of the forest. So it's kind of like you get like a bigger picture. Yeah, a lot of boats getting beached. Exactly. Classify it as sand because dirty because you hate it. I hate sand too. I don't like sand. I can't do the beach because of the sand. It's just because of the sand. It's like, it's worse than glitter, I swear. Like, genuinely, as somebody that used to go to the beach every once in a while, every single fucking time I would come back, right? Go to take a shower, because, you know, you just got back from the beach. Most of the time you want to take a shower if it isn't too late. Sand. Sand coming out of fucking every little crack, right? Then, you know, it's like next shower, like the next day or the day after that, depending on like the condition, right? More sand. Where the fuck is the sand coming from now? You know what I mean? Like, why am I still finding sand everywhere? So I don't know. Maybe that's just me though. Maybe I'm doing something wrong at the beach, but I don't like sand. It's worse than glitter. That's why you're so I prefer lakes now that you're older. I it depends. Depends on what I'm doing at the lake. But yeah, lakes are nicer.
Of geography and weather and becomes something that was chosen deliberately by human beings. From approximately 1770 and running through around 1870, the coastline around Pembrey and Devonsheaden was controlled at night by a group known as Welsh as Gwyer Bialy Bach. Okay. Translated into English as the men with the little hatchets, or sometimes more broadly, the
I feel
people
this guy with
of
the
little hatchets.
pronunciations.
They were local men drawn from villages of Kidwelly,
I feel
Pembrey,
him.
and the surrounding area, farmers and laborers by day, but by night, something significantly more dangerous. Their method was straightforward and horrifying. On stormy nights, when visibility at the sea collapsed and captains were navigating blind through wind and driving rain, the gang would position themselves along the shore with lanterns. To a ship's captain struggling to identify his position in the darkness, a light on shore was a navigational lifeline. It told you where
Yeah.
the land was, gave you a bearing, helped you avoid the rocks.
We
The
know
wreckers
about
knew this.
lighthouses.
They counted on it, actually.
I mean, yeah, we've all had our fair share of lighthouses here in this stream. We've had our fair share of lighthouse experiences. We know how important lighthouses are. And we know how easy it is for a lighthouse person to possibly kill their boss using a demon. But that's a different story for another day.
They positioned their lights at angles and at places calculated to
Story
make
for another
captains
day.
believe they were further from the sandbanks than they actually were, guiding them directly onto the killing ground of Devonsheaden. When a ship ran aground and began to break apart in the surf, the wreckers were already wading in. The cargo was the primary objective: casks of wine, brandy,
See,
and
that's what
rum,
I'm
bales
saying.
of cloth, barrels of spice, anything that could be carried away and sold or consumed. But the survivors struggling in the water presented a different kind of opportunity, and this is where the specific design of the hatchets becomes relevant and deeply disturbing. The hatchets
Oh,
carried by these
no.
men were not standard woodcutting tools. They featured a small axe blade on one
That's-
side and a claw on the other. The claw engineered specifically to break open the iron hoops on wooden cargo casks, and
Oh.
the blade was used for
Okay, we don't know what the blade. Hold up. Maybe I should let him finish.
something
Please,
considerably
finish.
more direct. According to documented accounts compiled from local records and reported by Pembrey Coastal Park Ranger Emir Richards in a 2018 episode of BBC program's Hidden
Okay,
Whale.
he's taking a while to get to it. I was gonna say, the moment he mentioned the claw on the back of the hatchet, I was genuinely like, oh no, please tell me they didn't use that for something very specific with the human. Like with a person. That would have been, oh my god. But no, cargo, makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense. The blade, we already know what the blade's gonna end up getting used for, let's be honest.
Which, whatever you do, editor, don't put anything BBC related. Holy Lord, will it get copyright hit. Anyways, the wreckers used the bladed side of their hatchets to remove the fingers of the people
BBCs.
they found in the water,
Yeah.
both the dying and the dead, in order to steal the rings of those fingers, what they were wearing. It is worth sitting with this detail for a moment. Go ahead, sit there. These were not impulsive crimes committed in the chaos of a shipwreck. The design of the tools implies premeditation by complete psychos. Someone at some point thought carefully about stealing rings from fingers and what was the most efficient way to take it from a drowning person's hand in the dark and the cold, and decided a blade was the answer. The local press of the era gave the records a second name alongside Gwir Bailey-Bach. They were called...
So they would
or
cut
he was
off their
calling them
fingers?
The Ladron Glan Imor. I know, I'm not Welsh. The robbers of the sea. Historians who have studied the Kivan Sheerden wrecking period note carefully that the evidence for deliberate systemic wrecking is partly documented and partly embellished through
Yeah,
centuries
so
of
they,
oral
like, just
retelling.
cut off their
the
fucking
coastline
fingers?
was genuinely dangerous on
To
its
steal
own, though,
rings?
and not every
Really?
wreck required human assistance to even happen in the first place. But
I guess
the
rings were more
violence against
valuable back
survivors
then,
is
though.
not folklore. It appears in contemporary newspaper accounts and in the physical evidence left on at least one very specific body recovered from the beach, which we will come to know shortly. What is not in dispute is this, though. For
Yeah, just
approximately 100
blood-covered
years,
rings.
this
I mean,
stretch
you could
of
wash
Welsh
off the blood,
coastline
granted,
was a
but
place
just
where
more
human
of
beings
cutting off the
went into the
people's
water and
fingers
did
to
not come
get
out
the
again.
rings was
Sometimes
more like,
because of the sea
okay.
itself, and sometimes because of the men waiting on the shore with lanterns and hatchets to steal your fingers. In 1818, the French vessel Le Providence...
Wait, they took the Wait, they took the fingers too? I thought they were just taking the rings. Dude, who is buying their fingers? Excuse me? Did the sailors have like a bounty on them or something? Fingers as a consolation prize or a brag, I guess? Damn, humans are fucked up. Fucked up in the head. Gotta make that money. I mean, that's why I'm like, the rings, you know what? Yeah, okay. Rings back then, probably pretty valuable compared to nowadays, where there's a good chance that the ring isn't going to be valuable simply because it's like a knockoff metal or something. But back then, all rings were just straight up valuable. You're learning that now, Boke? No. No, I am not learning that now. It's just every time I say that, it gets reinforced. I have learned that human beings are fucked up since I was little, unfortunately. Nah, it's just the rings, the fingers swell in the water. Oh, that's right. I forgot about the fingers swelling in water. So you need to cut off the finger to take the ring. That does make sense. Well, he also mentioned that every time they were doing this, it was in the dark because that was the whole purpose. Is they were like, they were acting like a lighthouse for these like sailors that were carrying like cargo and all this other stuff. And they would be waiting on the shore with their lantern that they're using to like lure them in and some hatchets. And yeah, it's like, I guess like when you're in the dark as well, like, fingers swell, it's dark, you can't see anything. I guess cutting off the finger, but taking the finger too? Damn. I feel like that was like, introduction to like a group of serial killers that just decided to like partner up. It's a prize? Yeah, but that's my point, is only really serial killers or bounty hunters do that. Because bounty hunters do it so they can claim their prize, which is usually money. And serial killers just do it because serial killers tend to like trophies. For some fucked up reason. Don't ask me, I wouldn't know. But yeah, it's like, it's like, so was this like a group of serial killers? Like, they take the fingers too, they're like, fucking guy, take the fucking finger too. Like, it just swell up that bad that they're just like, yeah, we're gonna keep this finger. It's like, nice and thick. Yeah, I could cook this up on the barbecue. Like, a band of cannibals, just like slowly, like, grilling it, watching the fingers turn on, like, over the fire, and they're like, yes, yes, yes. You know what I mean? Like, what time period? 1818. Or, yeah, 1818, according to this guy, because he's talking about a very specific vessel, which is the French vessel. So the 1800s, yeah, roughly that. 1800s to maybe late 1700s they were doing this. If, like, one of them was during this time. Eating a finger like corn. Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm talking about. Like, they could be like cannibals. I don't know. Maybe I'm thinking too much into this. I'm trying to, like, make sense of why they would take the finger after they cut it off. Like, after you cut off the finger, why not just take the ring at that point? Like, why do you need to take the fingers too? Like, why are you stealing these people's fingers? Are you eating them? Like, are they a band of cannibals? Are they serial killers taking trophies? Are they bounty hunters collecting a bounty? Like, what's going on? I needs to know. I needs to know. If the sailor is dead, yeah, their finger can swell quite a bit. Yeah, it did mention that some of the survivors were just straight up drowning. Some were, like, coming onto the shore from drowning because they just survived. So it's like their finger was probably still a bit swollen, yeah. I imagine, because it doesn't really take long for, like, the water moisture to kind of absorb into your skin. I feel like not a lot of people realize this, but your skin is very absorbent. That's why shit like lotion works, because it absorbs things. So, it's like, it's the same with leather. That's why leather is also very absorbent. If you have, like, actual, like, genuine leather on anything, you'll notice that, like, it absorbs things, that, like, liquids and stuff around it. And on top of that, like, most of the time, in order to touch it up, you need to give it a little bit of that moisture back. So that's why you have, like, the shoe oils and the leather oils and stuff like that. Because it, like, reinvigorates it. So yeah, it's, skin's very absorbent. Long story short, skin's very absorbent. So I'm laying on the shore and they just said, nah, give me your fingers. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I'm like, what the fuck?
I can do French because I make fun of them a lot.
Why would you count their finger as treasure unless you are a serial killer, though, Ash? That's what I'm saying. Wait, what's happening?
Set sail from Boudoir to Dunkirk.
Hold up, what's happening?
It's I can do French because I make fun of them a lot.
Based on what I found or researched, this is editor. The visible wreckages wrecks have not been identified as Provence. La Provence. I don't know. The only identified one. Okay, you moved too fast, editor. A little too fast, editor. That was a quick one. That was a quickie. The only identified one is S.V. Paul in 1925. So here's a picture of Neptune. Okay, so this is a picture of the ship.
Set sail from Boudoir to Dunkirk, carrying a cargo.
This is a picture of the Neptune ship
berries, coffee,
that was
and
verified.
Significant quantities of wine and brandy.
Basically.
Never reached its destination. The storms that plagued the Bristol Channel in that winter of that year drove the ship onto the sands of Sheridan, and when morning came, the wreck was visible from shore. What happened next was reported by the Cambrian newspaper at the time in language that makes it very clear what kind of community this coastline had cultivated.
There we go. We're about to hear it.
From Kidwelly and Poile, the villages nearest to the beach, swarmed like bees round a honeypot to take advantage of the cargo. They broke open the heads of the wine and brandy casks directly onto the beach, and within hours, an estimated 2,000 people had gathered on the shore to plunder and drink whatever they could lay their hands on. Men and women alike drank so heavily and so rapidly from the broken casks that authorities arriving on the scene found hundreds of people completely insensible in the sand. At least one man died directly as a result of his intoxication that day, killed not by the sea, not by the storm, but by the sheer stupidity and volume of brandy he consumed from a dead man's car.
Okay, so I think we understand it now. They were simply just drunkards. That's why. That's why the fingers were missing. I don't think we need anything else from that, because I don't think I need to tell any of you that drunk people do weird things. They do. Especially if, like, you're that drunk that you're, like, almost like most of you are basically dying from being drunk. Then, yeah, it's like, you're gonna do some stupid things. Well, aren't these townspeople not the group? No. Looters. Looters from the town. So basically, the group with the hatchet, they would lure them in. They would take their, the rings. They'd probably cut off the fingers, take the rings, right? How many of those fingers were actually taken by the group, though? Compared to the drunkards that are probably just doing random shit with them. I'm just saying, I think it's a little bit more realistic. Because there's no way a gang of serial killers got together and decided we're all going to take their fingers as trophies after we take the rings off. Or after we cut their fingers off and then take the rings off. So imagine after you cut the finger off, it's easier to slide the ring off, yes? I mean, as well as what else is there to do but get drunk at a fair? So fair. Imagine two looting townspeople finger fighting with dead sailor finger. I can totally see it though. That's what I'm saying. Like, most of the time, people that are that drunk, they do weird shit. They do weird things. They do.
Not by the storm, but by the sheer stupidity and volume of
That's why I don't
brandy
like the idea of getting
from a dead
drunk.
man's cargo on a cold winter beach. The incident is grotesque and a little bit too much partying, but it also tells something important about the culture of this coastline at that time. Now, there's two ways to say it. It looks like Cavan Sheridan or Kevin Sheridan. I think it's probably Cavan, but the wrecks of the Cavan Sheridan were not treated as tragedies by the local community. They were treated just as opportunities. That particular psychology that the dead and their possessions were simply available to whoever arrived first defined how people who drowned or were driven ashore on these sands were treated for much of the next century. Of all the deaths recorded on the Cavan Sheridan,
I was gonna say that I feel like, why didn't the authorities just take the loot that a lot of the ones that just passed out drunk, like they tried to grab and everything? But then, like, this is around the like this is like 1818. So it's like the early 1800s, right? Super early 1800s. Yeah, they probably didn't give a shit. So, to be honest, Kidwelly is actually beautiful. You should look it up. The town is an amazing area. I do remember there was this one place I really wanted to visit in Wells. It wasn't really a super heavy tourist town, but they did have tourists that came every once in a while because they had such nice like hiking areas and such nice like scenery and outdoors like things to do that it was just kind of like there were like the occasional like tourists that would go through there. And I remember seeing like a little video about it, and I remember being like, that looks so fucking gorgeous. I would love to go up there and just kind of like sit there with like, maybe like, one of the little buildings or bed and breakfast off to the side that has like a decent view and just sit there with my coffee and just like either draw what I see or just kind of like admire the view, you know what I mean? Just be so nice. The police or whatever were probably getting crunked too. I don't think that there was anything left for them to get crunked about because from the sounds of it, they were all drinking so much that even some of them died from drinking too much. So I don't think there was much left for the police, to be fair. I think the police were just like, fuck, we have to deal with all these drunk people. Don't really have time to go deal with all of the loot that no one is probably going to care about. You know what I mean? So I think it was just more of a matter of priorities. It's like now it's easier to like catch the people that were involved and like, either grab back the stuff or something. But back then they couldn't do that the same way. It was a lot harder. So yeah.
One stands apart, not because it was most violent, but because it had a face, a name, a history, and a grave that still exists to this day. On the 21st of November, 1828, a French wooden brig called
cool,
La Jeune meaning the young Emma, that's probably how you say it, was making her way from Martinique to the West Indies, back to La Havre, France. Good lord. I'm just gonna break in here. Look, man, I look up how to pronounce these things. I really do. And I'm not gonna be,
I believe you.
The YouTubers like, oh, I don't know how to pronounce that. But, there's a certain flair with some of these words that being raised in the South United States, I just don't have that flair. It is what it is. So anyways, they were carrying a cargo of rum.
See, that, he gets it. I mean, granted, maybe not the South part, wasn't raised in the South part, but he gets it. He does. Some words from different, like, languages, sometimes that you need that little, like, almost like that accent to be able to pronounce them correctly. He understands.
Sugar, spices, coffee,
I love
cotton,
this guy.
and ginger.
Hold up. I'm gonna just drop a subscribe real quick. He earned a subscribe for me just from that.
She was blown catastrophically
he
off
understands.
course by winter storms in the Bristol Channel and ran aground in Kevon, Sheridan Sands. Of the people aboard, 13 did not survive the wreck itself. Among them was a 12-year-old girl named Adeline Coquelin.
Why is she so massive?
Father, Lieutenant Colonel Coquelin.
Bro,
and she was, according to Coquelin, she was traveling with her father, Lieutenant Colonel.
Why do... This had to have been an accident. Because she's huge. I don't think she was this huge. Compared to her father. I don't think this is an accurate representation of how big this little girl was. I am scared to hear what happened to the little girl, though, but to make light of the situation before we hear about it. Yes. She blew up the screen? Yeah, she did. God damn. She took up, like, quite literally a little over a quarter of the screen. Almost half the screen. Shit. If you could go to the UK, you would go to New Forest, a super important place for witches and pagans. You already had me. Already had me. I'm curious. I want to see it. That's all you had to say was, this was a very sacred or important place for witches or pagans. I'm immediately like, yes, I want to see it. I would love to visit it. Automatically.
Colonel Coquelin. And she was,
it's always so fascinating.
The niece of Josephine de Beauharnais.
Oh my god, fucking fancy.
And the first wife of Napoleon Bonaparte. A child connected by blood to one of the most powerful figures in modern European history, drowning in the shallows of a Welsh beach on a November night in the dark while men waited on shore with lanterns and hatchets. 9 of the 13 who died that day, including Adeline and her father, were buried at St. Iltud's Church in the village of Pembury, a short distance
At
from
least
the
they were
forest.
buried
Their
in
graves are still
the
there.
church.
But here's the detail that has driven the folklore of this beach for nearly 200 years. The detail that connects Emma directly to the Bach. And that detail
Bach?
transforms pretty much this particular tragedy from just a maritime
The Bach? What's a Bach?
accident
I
into
must
something that
know.
is considerably darker. When
I'm
Adeline's
assuming it's
body
like a
was
cryptid.
recovered from the beach, 2 of her fingers were reported missing, cut away. The evidence suggests to take the rings from them. The implication drawn by those who documented the case at that time was unambiguous. The records had reached her before.
Okay, we gotta remember this for when the Bach comes up. 2 fingers were missing because they cut them off for the rings. Remember that. 2 fingers. So I have a feeling those 2 fingers are probably missing on the Bach, I'm assuming. Theoretically. Do you have his video, as I always have a theory on the disappearance that makes 0 sense, of his in the queue? I do not, but I have 2 videos in the queue that are an hour or hour and 30 minutes long. So I might not be adding another video for today, but tomorrow I might add it. Yeah, we might, well, not tomorrow. We might do that for Thursday, not tomorrow. Because I forgot, Wednesday's Wolf Night. Can't forget about Wolf on Wednesday.
The rescuers did. A 12-year-old child, the niece of Napoleon's wife,
Ads are gonna start
pulled from
shortly.
the water in southwest Wales and mutilated for her rings on her fingers. And that
I
is
will
the
pause
most
when
famous
ads
death
play.
in history of Kevon Sheardon. That is who is buried at St. Iltud's Church. And that is the one of the figures, or at least one of the figures, whose ghost has reportedly been seen near the shoreline end of Pembury Forest in the centuries since. A pale, drenched figure standing still and then simply no longer present. Now, I bet you're sitting there, you're saying to yourself, well, Roanoke, there couldn't be any more troubling chapters. Well, you're wrong. One of the most troubling chapters in the long maritime history of Kevon Sheardon came in the autumn of 1925, and it is, in one respect, the most visible of all
Come
of these, because
on.
unlike every other wreck on this coast, this one never fully disappeared. The SV Paul was a 4-masted windjammer that had been launched in Seattle in 1919 under the name Mount Whitney. Came from the
1919.
U.S., that means we need to go take over England.
Wait, hold up. Is that almost a decade later? No. Almost. It's literally 1 year off from, like, a whole, like, not decade, but, like, a whole, like, basically era away. Literally 1 year past that. If it was 1918, it would have been.
1919,
Century, yes.
under the name
But
Mount
yeah.
Whitney. Came from the U.S.,
Just one
that means
more
we need
year.
to go take over England because they
What
have
the
something
fuck?
of ours. Renamed
Sorry.
first to Margaret Sayer in 1924,
Sorry.
and then to Paul
That was my
in
bad.
1925 when she left Halifax, Nova Scotia,
hate the fucking
bound for
Windows
Dublin,
button.
Ireland. She was carrying approximately 2,000 tons of tropical hardwood timber. She never made it to her destination. Caught in a severe Atlantic gale, she lost her sails, and then her anchors pretty much went next, and she was driven helplessly across the Carmarthen Bay, coming to basically aground herself on the western end of Kevon Sheardon Beach on the edge of the forest. Nobody died in the wreck of the SV Paul, which makes it unusual in the history of the coastline. But you know why?
Yeah, a
You know
little
why it
bit,
probably didn't
considering
happen?
what
Look,
we've seen
I'm
before.
going to be honest with you.
Okay, we have ads. We have ads. I will pause for ads. If you don't get ads, then maybe it's a good thing. Maybe you're lucky. Just get to hang out with us a little bit more. Get to talk with us. And if you have a sub, you already get to talk to us. You don't even need to worry about ads coming your way. You don't even need to worry about it. But yeah, so the SV Paul, I think that was what they were talking about in the little editor's note before. Damn, my stomach's hurting. My stomach hurting. I should probably drink a little bit of water. I have been drinking a lot of coffee, so I think that's why my stomach's hurting. Yeah, it was the only one with records aside from that last one. Aside from that last one, because that last one did have records, because obviously you had the grave of the little girl and the father, and then on top of that you had, like, the record of, you know, her getting her fingers cut off and for the rings, and yeah, that why. So yeah, the SV poll though, that was for the editor's note, and then with this one, yeah. So the other one, the first one we heard, and the ones I guess we didn't hear about because it sounded like there was way more. Yeah, the ones that we didn't hear about, those seem like they were yeah, they possibly happened, but there's no actual solid proof that we have that they did happen yet. Yeah, because you never know. Something might pop up on the beach or something. You never know. Don't script the detail, Ron. Or I call him Ron. Sorry, I was thinking of the caption, Ron. Yeah, don't skip on the detail. We need to know things. He's probably just giving us all the verified details, you know? We gotta have the verified details as well. Verified details are a lot more important. True, true. I'm gonna grab my other pen. Lately, I've been avoiding even touching my pen before streams and during streams, but every once in a while, I'm like, fuck. I just need a little bit. I feel like videos are a nice chill one, though, for it, you know? Videos is kind of perfect for it. It's very chill, very mellow. Give you a reason, too? Yeah, well, in a way, that's more of a general self-care, but yeah, we'll say it's my medicine this time. If you are wondering about the pen that I keep talking about, yeah, it's basically just, it helps me keep my anxiety in check. My anxiety in check, and sometimes it helps slow down my brain, which is handy. Other times it's not handy. Sometimes it is. Why no pen? I just don't want to become too reliant on it. It's just that. I just don't want to become too reliant on it. I'm very paranoid, very paranoid about addiction. Ads are over, but I'm gonna do this little, a quick little story. Very quick story time. I get very paranoid about getting addicted to things because, unfortunately, basically, a whole half side of my family, which is mainly on Mama Boke's side. Actually, it's primarily on Mama Boke's side now that I think about it. I have a lot of addicts in that side of the family. And I've seen what it does to people, and I don't like it. I don't like it. And that's enough for me to say, you know, I'm gonna avoid addictions. I'm just gonna... That's why it's like, the marijuana's only drug I will ever really have. The only one. It's not a gateway drug for me. It's literally the only one. For me, no other one exists. Anxiety pin that you can draw happy little trees with, you know? Yeah, exactly. It's just it comes down the brain, you know? It mellows me out sometimes, and then yeah, and most of the time I use it a lot for social anxiety because I get that's where my anxiety gets me the most. It's not just sudden anxiety sometimes. Sometimes it's simply it's just social situations. It's mainly social situations, especially if I'm in very large crowds. When I'm in very large crowds, it almost makes me panicky. I get very panicky, I get very short-tempered, I get very aggravated, basically. And I will snap at people when I get like that. Because when I get that overwhelmed and that, that anxious, and that, panicky, if that makes sense, it kinda accumulates, and I get very snappy at people, unfortunately. There's been many times where I've been in very large social situations, and I've literally snapped at whoever I was with. We need to leave. I need to leave. No. Leave. Or there's other times where strangers will try to talk to me, and I get really quick with them, and I'm like, no, I'm leaving. Or oh, okay, bye, you know, kind of like that, a very rushy. Same, that's why you don't drink any alcohol, both parents are alcoholics. Yeah, exactly. It's just sometimes you just need a... just seeing what it does to other people is enough for you to be like, I'll pass. But yeah, it's similar with alcohol for me too. I don't really like drinking alcohol. If I do drink alcohol, it is primarily alcohol that has more of a taste rather than a lot of alcohol. So, mainly because I just don't want to get drunk. That's my biggest thing. I never, if I'm almost terrified of it in a way. Because once you get drunk, it's very easy to go a little past that point to the point where you black out and you don't know what you're doing. And I just don't like the idea of not being in control of myself. I hate not being in control of myself. I want to feel like I'm in control of myself. The moment I feel like I'm losing control of myself, I'm gonna start fucking, like, freaking out. You know what I mean? Same, you also get lightheaded in large crowds, like your brain is way too overwhelmed. Yeah, because, like, there's so much going on. And I don't know about you guys, but I'm very much, like, people watcher, right? I'm very observant of what's going on around me, because I tend to get a little paranoid with other people. So, like, people I don't know type of thing. So, it's like I'm always, like, trying to keep an eye out, like, around me. I'm always trying to have an eye on everything. And, yeah, that gets so overwhelming so quickly if you're in a large crowd. Yeah, the alcohol you do consume, aka very little, more of taste, not alcohol. Yeah. Okay, I'm story time over. I'm gonna go ahead and resume. I apologize for that little interruption, but I just had a little, go on a little yap session for a moment.
All because Americans were
Did
straight
someone
up
say
armed,
alcohol?
brother. They saw those guys coming with their little hatchets, and they're like, primitive. And they
No.
pulled out, I don't know, the Tommy gun. And we're like, I think you fellas should leave. Anyways, but the timber cargo was looted
Oh my
extensively by local
god.
residents. So thoroughly, in fact, that Coastal Park Ranger Emir
Yeah.
Richards noted on Hidden Whales in 2018 that some of the hardwood from Paul's hold may still exist today in buildings, extensions, and garden sheds in the local area, quietly
What?
outlasting the people who salvaged it. The hull of the SV Paul was never reafloated, I guess, and never fully broken down either. Her iron skeleton still lies at the western end of Kievan Sheridan at low tide,
That's kinda
resting
sick,
quietly in the
though.
air, and it serves as
I don't know. Something about seeing, like, a shipwreck beached like that is just. I kind of would want to visit it, you know? It looks kind of neat. I mean, it's, sad, but it looks neat. Like, look at that. Like, the way that, like, you see all the, like, the moss or algae is, like, growing on it, right? Like, it's kind of like nature still taking it back. Even though it's on the coastline, nature's still, like, taking it back. Slowly but surely. And then, like, the way, like, the iron, because he mentioned it was, like, an iron, like, cast. So it's, like the way the iron is just kind of slowly rusting and just kind of, like, you can tell it's caving in under its own weight kind of thing. So cool.
the single most visible reminder
Yeah, I want to explore,
that
yeah.
300 ships
So
are
cool.
under the sand that you're straight up walking on. The maritime depths of Kievan Sheridan are the oldest layer of Pembrey's buried history, but they are not the only one. At some point in the late 19th century, the character of the death here would change from the sea to the land itself, from drowning to fire, from the random violence of storms to something systemic and industrial that planted itself in the heart of Pembrey boroughs and began to kill with industrial efficiency. It started in 1882. The Stowe Market Explosive Company, you already know how this is going to go, established a dynamite factory on the sandy dune land of Pembrey boroughs in that year, drawn
I love how he stopped himself after he said that the company involved explosives. He's like, okay, that's your hint. That's your hint, guys.
there for a reason
Right
that is
there.
in retrospect deeply ironic. The remoteness and the soft ground of the sand dunes were considered ideal for absorbing shockwaves from accidental detonations. In other words, they built a factory designed to blow up in a place where an explosion would theoretically do less damage. The theory was tested almost immediately. Results pending. Late on the 17th of November, 1882, a
Neat.
powerful explosion tore through the works, turning the ever-present danger into a devastating reality. 7 workers were killed instantly. The youngest of them was 13 years old. The blast was so powerful, it was powerful enough that it was actually heard as far away as Tenby, approximately 25 miles of distance across the bay, and the destruction on site was so
I just want to say, you're testing a theory, right? You're like, okay, we think if we have, like, this very specific environment, right, the explosions would do less damage. Right? That's your theory. So, realistically, I would say if I was to test that theory in their shoes, I would do a small amount of explosives and slowly crank it up, right? Like, be a little realistic. And on top of that, you would avoid accidents because if you just do a bunch of them, like a whole, like, look at all these. I don't know if all of these barrels involved with the explosion or like what's going on, but if that's what I think it is, that's a lot of fucking explosives. Is it not? Why would you do that many explosives? Like, why? Whose like smart idea was to do that? Sorry, I don't know. I think that's kind of silly though. Like, if you're gonna test something like that, start small and then work your way up. Don't just, okay, now we're just gonna full gun it. I'm so glad these guys didn't have access to nukes back then, because goddamn, they would have set them off all at once.
Reality. 7 workers were killed instantly. The youngest of them was
Jeez.
13 years old. The blast was so powerful, it was powerful enough that it was actually heard as far away as Tenby, approximately 25 miles of distance across the
25
bay.
miles.
And the destruction on site was so complete that the Stowe Market Explosive Company was effectively destroyed by it, going into receivership later. The youngest dead
How
were
many
not soldiers, they were
explosives
not
did
sailors,
you
they were
use?
workers and children on a factory floor in the Welsh countryside, and the ground that swallowed them would later swallow many more. Alfred Nobel's Explosives Company eventually acquired the Pembury site in the years that followed, and the dunes went quiet for a time. But that quiet was only a pause, as you might imagine, given the rest of the stories surrounding
Oh,
Pembury.
no.
The ground
Oh, no.
had learned what it was for at this point. When the First World War arrived in 1914, the British government looked at Pembury Burrows and saw exactly what the Stowe Market Company had seen before it: isolated, sandy, remote, and capable of absorbing a blast.
Well,
Nobel's
we kind
Explosive
of
Company
did.
broke ground.
We did do it with nukes, but like, imagine if those same fuckers were in charge of the nukes. They would have just set them all off in the same place at once. Like, how many explosives do you have to set off at once for it to be heard 25 fucking miles? I don't think you guys realize how far of a distance that is. That's a far fucking distance. It destroyed their entire building, which I hope, I imagine, wasn't literally next to where they were setting it off. And that's also crazy to think about. So it's like, considering how many explosives they must have set off, imagine if they had, like, these very specific people had access to nukes. Imagine the kind of testing they would have done. They would have just immediately, like, just set them all off at once. Yeah, like a big, huge boom. Exactly. And it's just like, even if nothing went wrong, it's like, okay, cool. I guess it worked, but we have no more, we don't have any more. Like, we have to make more now, so that was kind of a waste. I don't know. It just seems like overkill, you know?
That year on a complex
Seems such
covering
massive
approximately
overkill to test
771
something like
acres
that.
of dune land. The same dune land, the same forest edge, the same ground where 7 workers and 13-year-old or a 13-year-old had already been killed prior by an explosive company. You know, learning from mistakes be damned. The facility that emerged from that construction was not one building, but 2 interlocked operations. The first, designed His Majesty's Explosive Factory, was responsible for the manufacture of TNT, tetrol, and propellants. The second, National Filling Factory number 18, was responsible for filling shells, torpedoes, and naval mines with the...
We talked about this before. But there's a reason we need to learn history. It's for purposes like this. I mean, granted, those results were inconclusive because they all blew themselves up. But, fuck history, I guess. You're sick and you want to play a game, but you can't choose one. If you're sick, I would say play a game that's easy to pick up and put down. So that way you don't feel committed to it. Because there's one thing I know when I'm sick. The games that I tend to like playing versus the ones I don't like playing are always ones like card games, roguelikes, stuff like that. Maybe simulation games too. Simulation games is another good one. I always tend to gravitate towards those. Like, ones that don't really require a lot of brain power.
explosives produced next door, as well as the additional task of recovering explosive material from shells that had been defectively produced and needed to be
Warframe's a
broken
good
down
sick
and
game
recycled.
too.
Between these two operations, Pembury became one of the United Kingdom's principal TNT production sites. Over the course of the war, the factory produced approximately 15,000 tons of TNT and 20,000 tons of propellant. Those are not abstract quantities. They represent an industrial operation on a scale that makes it genuinely difficult to visualize.
Want to play either
Mile
Cat
after
Mail
mile of
or
factory buildings,
Restory?
railway lines, blast
I don't know about Restory, but I would say Cat Mail. Because I have played Cat Mail Co. I love Cat Mail Co. It is so cozy. So cozy. And that is definitely an easy game to pick up and, like, put down. You know, you won't feel, like, super committed to it. So if you start feeling really, really bad and you need to lay down or something, then, you know, it's not that big of a deal.
mounds, and storage bunkers, all of it hidden inside and beneath the pine forest of Pembury Burrows, all of it staffed around the clock. At peak operation, several thousand workers were employed on the site. The majority of them women, many of them local, many of them young, some of them very young, doing work that was essential to the war effort, and quietly, steadily, it was killing them. The most pervasive danger at the Pembury factory was not explosions, although, you know, there were those. It was just the TNT itself. Trinitrotoluene, or as the common folks say, TNT, which is me, it's acutely toxic when absorbed through the skin or inhaled in dust form. And the women who spent their days handling it in the factory buildings absorbed it constantly because they weren't given gloves or...
Yeah, wasn't there also something similar with matches? Like the people that would make matches before they changed the way matches were made, they were made with something that was toxic, and it was slowly getting all of the workers sick, and the workers were slowly dying. I wonder if this is something similar then. Because I remember there was that whole thing about it, and I think that happened in Britain, I want to say. Did it happen in Britain? It might have happened elsewhere. But yeah, they had to completely change the way that they did matches, like the ingredient for it and everything. Oh, and the glowy part of watches. I completely forgot about the watches. The Radium Girls, wasn't it? I think it was, yes. Yeah, because during that time, similar with this, because of all the wars going on, yeah, it was primarily always girls that worked at the factories. Yeah.
Any level of PPE that would have actually protected them. The chemical interacted with their bodies in a visible and disturbing way. It turned their skin yellow, then orange, and their hair changed the color to match. They became known as the Canary Girls, not affectionately, but descriptively. They were walking indicators of poisoning, and the transformation in their appearance was not a harmless side effect, but the first stages of a systemic attack on their livers. When your liver starts shutting down, you go jaundice, which means your corneas turn yellow, your skin turns yellow, and it's actually the buildup of bilirubin. That being, of course, when your body breaks down old red blood cells that are defunct, it creates a kind of a yellow-orange waste product. The condition that killed the most severely affected women was called toxic jaundice, which is, again, a progressive liver failure caused by TNT accumulation that moved from discoloration through anemia and jaundice and, in the most severe cases, pretty much brought on coma and death. Across Britain's World War I munitions industry as a whole, historians, including researcher Anne Spurgeon, cited by the BBC, have documented approximately 400 cases of toxic jaundice, of which roughly one quarter, around 100 women, died. Records for individual factories are incomplete, and the full number of Pembury women who died from TNT poisoning cannot be precisely confirmed. Probably a lot of records around this time were just scuffed. It's not
most likely, yeah.
But this was not a safe place to work, as you can pretty much tell.
Most
it was
of those numbers were
the
probably
job description, if it had been written honestly,
under
would have read handling substances that will change the color of your body and may eventually destroy your liver. Two of those women have names in the record, though. Elizabeth A. Jones, known to those who worked alongside her as Lizzie, was employed at the National Explosives Factory at Pembury and died on the 23rd of October 1916 in her hometown of Cardigan, her body destroyed by the TNT she had been handling in those factory buildings. Her mother subsequently applied for compensation, fighting to have her daughter's death officially recognized as a consequence of war work. Gladys Irene Pritchard, a widowed munitions worker with two children whose husband had been killed at the Somme on the 10th of July 1916, died from TNT poisoning in November of 1916, listed among the Welsh women killed by their own country's war efforts. These two women did not die in explosion. There was no blast, no flash of light, no sudden end. Their deaths were slow, progressive, and chemical, their livers failing
And
over
could have been
weeks,
prevented.
while their factory,
That's
well, it
sad.
just kind of continued without them to fill shells and meet its production.
The matches they used that banned chemical, forgot its name. I feel like it might be radium because I'm pretty sure they did name the girl, like the girls who got it, like, you know, banned, and like force them to replace the chemical's name. I'm pretty sure they named them after it. The Victorian era was so fascinating. We messed with such toxic stuff for beauty or basic living. It's crazy. I mean, in a way, white phosphorus. That's what it was. Yeah, it wasn't. Okay, it wasn't radium. No, yeah, no, that sounds familiar. White phosphorus. I remember like hearing about it as well in a documentary. White phosphorus. But yeah, no, during the Victorian era, I mean, granted, if we didn't mess with that stuff then and learn how toxic it was, we probably would have learned later on anyway. So it was better to learn sooner than later, I guess. But still, like, it was white phosphorus? Okay. So yeah, it was that.
Quotas. That's why it's always important to remember. You know, people get caught up in the fact that their company that they work for is
Lead
their
makeup,
family or some
lead.
crap like that.
Oh my
Look,
god,
I don't.
we could go on and on about the stuff lead was in. Lead was in paint, it was in makeup, it was in literal, like, products you would put in your hair, or you, like, in some cases you would eat. It was in dishes, it was everywhere. It was literally everywhere. Yeah, it was in everything. There's a reason why, no offense to those that may be watching that might understand what I'm talking about, that, you know, might take offense to it, but that is where the whole, like, you know, joke with the much, much older generation having that lead stare. That's why it's called a lead stare. Is because, like, once you get enough lead in your system, it literally, like, your brain just blanks. And you just have, like, a distant, like, 1,000-yard stare, and it happens every single time. Now it's mercury, basically. No, it's not mercury, it's plastic. That's what's fucking us up now. Mercury, yeah, mercury's in, like, quite a bit of stuff, but most of the time, mercury is very preventable. We know how toxic it is, so we know we need to avoid it in certain things. The only thing that has it in abundance that we actively put in our bodies is fish, but you can't really prevent that. Fish always has it. It's plastic. Microplastics is what's fucking us up now. But there is, like, a theory, because right, microplastics have become almost unavoidable now. There is a theory that what's going to happen is our bodies are eventually going to evolve to either, so, like, you know, some way to deal with the microplastics, whether that's, like, figuring out a way to push it out of our bodies, or figuring out a way to put it to use in our bodies instead. They don't, I mean, obviously we don't know which route evolution's gonna take, because evolution takes a while. Evolution is not fast. Evolution takes, like, generations to actually kick in. But microplastics have been an issue for a while. Sadly, you're gonna start lurking for a bit so you can watch a guide to find all of the orbs Rallis. It's so painful. Nah, you're all good, Dr. Meow. The Victorian era is like medieval health living standard meets the modern world. It's so crazy. Oh. Microplastic research has shown that it may affect male fertility. I guess, like, yeah, the whole, like, microplastics involved, yeah. It could. It could, but I think we need to slow down anyway on the fertility anyway, to be honest. I'm gonna be, like, you know, like not, like, get rid of it, obviously. That's not what I'm advocating for. But you know what, with, like, how things have been going, maybe it's a good thing that we have a smaller population. Like, our population gets a tiny bit smaller. Like, obviously not die out, but, like, it gets a little bit smaller. You say evolution, but we basically broken the natural order, so that doesn't exactly apply to us anymore. No, it still applies to us. What do you think, we're fucking gods now, Dr. Meow? You can't just say, sorry, nature, we're just too advanced for you. You know what I mean? Yeah, no, it doesn't matter. Like, we're still gonna evolve. That's how, like, that's nature. Evolution is just nature. That's like saying we're not gonna have any Earth. You know what I mean? Like, unless we destroy the Earth, you'd be surprised the way nature finds ways to heal. Nature is a powerful fucking bitch. And I don't think modern humans can defeat nature because there has been no evidence we have been able to defeat nature. Both modern first world countries are already declining slowly. And do you realize how evolution works? Evolution works by the surviving members of the populace get together, have other surviving members. Those traits get passed down to surviving members. Those, like, that gets remembered. That gets passed down. That's why evolution takes a while. Because evolution goes by generation. Just because the countries are declining, unless human beings are dying out, evolution will keep going. But, I mean, the survival of the fittest isn't You need a science class. Evolution is not survival of the fittest. It's passed down through children. It's not survival of the fittest. It's traits that get passed down to children and are... You understand evolution? Survival of the fittest isn't evolution. Heads up. I just want to give you that heads up. I'm gonna wrap up this topic right here, but I will tell you, evolution is not survival of the fittest. It's not even close to survival of the fittest. Need to reproduce to pass the important stuff? Exactly. As long as humans are reproducing, we're gonna keep evolving. That's just how evolution works. Evolution doesn't care about if the strongest survived. Evolution doesn't care if the weakest survived. Evolution doesn't care if the inbred are surviving. Evolution does not care who survives. Evolution cares about passing on traits down to children. That's evolution. So as long as human beings are reproducing, unless we start becoming like immortal gods where we stop needing the ability to reproduce and we're all just living age forever, evolution's going to keep doing its thing. It's going to keep working. Until we get out of the reproduction phase, which I don't think we will, but say if, like, theoretically we had some science fiction kind of stuff happen, we're still going to evolve. Evolution happens. Every species evolves. That's how we got to the point where we are now. We aren't evolving for efficiency anymore. We're evolving pretty much... I think you're thinking of something else. I can't speak properly. Please stop trying to explain evolution to you. I know what it is and what factors apply. Just can't explain what you were trying to say, but whatever. Sorry, I just think you're confusing evolution with something, but yeah, we'll move on. We're gonna move on from the topic. Because obviously this isn't going anywhere, so we're gonna move on.
I want to make waves here, but a company is not your family. They'll never be your family. They don't care about you at all. That's why, like, remember in 2020 when, like, all of these friggin' companies were like, we realize we're in unprecedented times. We feel bad for you.
I fucking hate when companies say that.
Your bills are still due on the 15th. It was like, dude, no, it was so stupid. Like, they're like,
fucking
we're trying
hate
to
when
help
companies do that. That's why no one likes companies. I'm telling you.
Don't wreck your own meat suit is the best way to say it. Trying to make sure a company is, like, satiated is the best way. Because, you know what? Your body won't even be cold, and your obituary won't even be written. Never
bend over backwards for companies. I think that is the overall general, like, message of this, like, area. Don't bend over backwards for companies. I remember my boomer dad showed me some dumb Fox News article from way back in the 2009 that said just because we were kids look at darn phones all the time. We will evolve to have big eye. See, that's what I'm saying. Evolution doesn't happen that quickly, though. Bro, yeah. Yeah, don't bend over. So, like, don't bend over backwards is basically it's a saying. It's like a saying for, hey, don't, like, don't try to go past your capabilities for, like, something that isn't worth it. Which is where, like, the don't bend over backwards. Because you can't bend over backwards. Unless, like, I guess you were really fucking determined and you ended up hurting yourself to do it. But that's why it's, like, don't bend over backwards. It's like, you don't want to do that. You don't want to do that. Bend over? Bend over. You could clip it out of context? You could. You could. You shouldn't. You shouldn't. And the restraint that you're showing is appreciated until Brian clipped it. We will all look like Golem in 50 years because of them phones. I think that would be hilarious, though. Wouldn't it? Like, imagine just one day, like, because we have like social media now, so we can see like other people's like images and everything from like the past. So imagine like seeing that like happen, right? And you're just like, huh? Like, excuse me? Are you an alien? Brian said, "Fuck you."
Being
Yes.
listed. Remember that. Anyways, so the Canary Girls at Pimbury and the sites like it are now
Yes.
commemorated
Jova?
as wartime casualties because
Been Jova?
that is what they are. They died in the service of the same war effort as the men in the trenches, and they died in the same woods where people now walk their dogs, and where a bunch of other people have died. It's not great. On the 31st of July, 1917, the National Explosive Factory at Pimbury also exploded, if you can believe it. This was not the kind of accident factories sometimes experience, a small fire.
I
a
wonder
single
who saw
explosion in
that
one
coming.
building, or another incident that could be quick.
I wonder who saw that coming. Man, an area that has a history for explosive companies exploded? Insane. Can't believe. Vogue, do you want me to doom post? You work in healthcare, by the way? Oh gods. I would do it in the Discord. I wouldn't do it in chat. I would do it in the Discord. Like, I'm glad you gave me that context with healthcare, though. Right? Who could have guessed? Man, so strange. And the green skin from avocado toast we always waste our money on. Wait, really? Please don't tell me that was an actual thing. Green skin from the avocado toast? Oh my gods.
Contained.
Do they think everybody lives in California or something?
That killed 6 people. What makes this event especially important is what happened afterwards. A formal government inquest examined the site, questioned witnesses, and searched for the cause of the explosion. Yet, despite the investigation, the official conclusion was simple.
Yeah.
No one could determine what had triggered the blast, and it remains completely unexplained to this day. The blast was referred to locally and in heritage records as the Hill 60 explosion, the name that carries its own weight, Hill 60 being simultaneous.
Okay, I'm just saying, what if, because they said they don't know who, like, what determined, what caused the blast or whatnot. So I'm going to take this moment to theorize, okay? This is just like a little theory. This isn't like, obviously factual. But what if it was the workers? And that's another reason why it wasn't like the investigations yield nothing. Because they didn't want all of the internal conflicts coming up front, because the companies do that. If there is a big enough incident that happens due to inner turmoil that happens within the company. Oh yeah, someone got drunk too. You know what? This is Wells. I think Jay's thing might be actually more in line, because like someone got drunk, possibly. They're dealing with explosives. Who knows? With Fox News, murmurs, you wouldn't be surprised them saying the reason millennials can't buy houses because we always buy avocado toast. I think that they no, actually I wouldn't be surprised either. I wouldn't. Fox News is also it's one of the news outlets that I don't even think is a news outlet anymore. I think it's more of like, it's more of like whoever pays them the most. That's what they're going to promote. Whatever the person wants that pays them the most. That's it. Genuinely. I can't trust anything Fox News says. It's like with Facebook. It's like if I see someone's source is Facebook, I'm gonna be like, no, I'm sorry, I don't know about that one. I don't know about that one, my guy.
Obviously, the designation
Yeah, or
used
what
for
fits
one
their
of the most
biases. Yeah.
brutal and contested battle sites on the Western Front in Belgium, where tunnels were packed with explosives and detonated beneath enemy lines, killing hundreds in an instant. Not one
Oh.
knows whether the name was originally the factory's name for the building or a label that came to reflect the scale of the disaster. Either way, it has remained the name most closely associated with the explosion in the historical record. The 6 who died that day were Mildred Owen, age 18,
That's
Dorothy Mary
crazy
Watson,
though.
age
You're
18.
I guess maybe because it was a more recent like tragedy, but the other one, like the other explosion, way more people died. And there was even like, I mean, granted he hasn't listed all the victims yet, but like there was even like that 13-year-old girl. They were drinking too close to the emergency detonate button like in The Simpsons. I was told, I don't know if this is true. This was just something I heard. But I was told with The Simpsons, the only reason why Homer even had a job at that factory was something because his dad made a deal prior to like basically like, I can't remember his name, but the greedy bitch that runs it. He like made a deal with him. He's like, "Okay, he's always going to have a job though." And then yeah, that's what happened. Which I think is kind of interesting if that's true. I think that's interesting. You're not American, but you notice Fox News is very one-sided and biased. I agree. I think that if you're a news outlet, that is the one thing you should not be, is one-sided or biased. No. You need to be able to tell the story as is, regardless of the sides and what the sides think of what happened. You need to be able to tell it straight up how it is, rather than favor either side. That's what I think news should be. But, journalism kind of lost its meaning a while ago. At least for in the US, it lost its meaning a while ago. I don't know how the state of it in other places. Sadly, remember they were like, I could afford a house at their age, must be avocado toast, we were lazy and multiple jobs to pay for it. Yeah, those older people just haven't bought in a house in a while. Like, they haven't seen the housing market. The housing market for a while has been just like way, way out of reach. For a while, you could only rent. Now it's hard to even rent. Now you have a hard time doing that because most of these houses have been bought up by all these these like realtors and banks and these other people that just have an excess, and then they sell them out ridiculous prices. Then you have the landlords, and they just rent them out in ridiculous prices. It's just a whole big bad cycle. Yeah, it's half the reason for the America brain rot. A little bit of the reason. I feel like there's a lot of reasons that go into the America brain rot, to be honest. But there is definitely America brain rot, 100%. And it is so strong. News should be able to tell the story from a neutral standing. Exactly. I think it's very important to get the initial facts from a neutral standpoint rather than a standpoint that is on either side. I don't like whatever side it is. You know what I mean? It needs to be told from a neutral standpoint so people, believe it or not, can think for themselves on what they think.
Or 19. Again, records
Too many
not great.
people are
John
telling
Davies,
other people
age
what to
41,
think.
Christopher
You know what I
McCarty,
mean?
age 22, George Brown, age 29, William Edward
That's
Miles,
because we're
age
lazy and we need to
31.
work
Two of them were
150
teenagers. Two of
hours
them were
a
young
week.
women who had gone to work in a factory in the woods because
Just
their
breaking
country
the
needed them
impossible
to.
boundaries
The
we
blast
need to do.
mounds built around the factory buildings, low earthen berms that can still be walked in across, or at least walked on across Pembrey County Park today, are often mistaken for natural hills. In reality, they were built to contain explosions like the one in July of 1917. They were not signs of failed engineering, but part of the factory's original design. The people who planned the site knew that explosions were always a possibility, so they shaped
Yeah.
the landscape to limit the damage when one happened. Those workers who died in July of 1917 lost their lives in a place that had been built with that risk in mind. So, if the 1917 explosion is the most disturbing in its inexplicability, the explosion of the 18th of November 1918 is the most disturbing in its timing. It's just a year later. The armistice ending
timing.
World War I was signed on the 11th day of November 1918. The guns stopped. After 4 years of slaughter on an industrial scale, the killing had finally, formally been declared over. 1 week later, at approximately 10:15 in the evening, a shed inside the National Explosive Factory at Pembrey just exploded. 3 women from Swansea, who had come to work in these woods to help win a war that was
Can we
already won,
stop?
did not walk back out. Their names were Mary.
Like, genuinely, can we stop with the explosive factories in this area? Clearly, it's not working out. I'm just saying, I don't know what the issue is. I don't know if, like, it's the local populace that's getting hired at these plants. I don't know if it's the landscape or what it is, but clearly it's not working. It's not working. I'm sorry. You got 2, but 3? A third? A fucking third? That is 3 strikes, you're out. No more factory. Can we stop doing it now? I think we learned, right? Third time's a charm. God damn it. It's like the how many explosions will it take for them to stop building an explosive factory here? I need to know this, and I swear, if there's still a explosive factory here, which I don't think there is, cause based off of this video, I think it's gonna be the forest that's gonna end up being there. But I swear, if there's still an explosive factory here, I'm gonna lose it. If like to this day, they still keep doing these explosive factories, I'm going to lose it. There's no way. How many times? 3? Yeah, 3. So this is, like I said, 3 strikes, you're out. If it happens again, stupidity. After that 3rd time, just straight up stupidity. Because, I mean, at that point, come on, guys. Clearly, this location is not working out.
Mary Fitzmaurice, age 36, a charged
But rest
woman
in peace
on
to the
factory
victims.
floor. Jane Jenkins, approximately 20 to 21 years old, an examiner, and Edith Ellen Copham, age 19, a process worker. They had been working in a shell dismantling shed, part of the factory's recycling operation, breaking down 18-pounder high explosive shells so that the materials inside could be recovered and reused. The war was over. They were dismantling the weapons, not making them. Jane Jenkins was killed instantly when the explosion occurred. Edith Copham and Mary Fitzmaurice were severely injured in the blast and died later.
Okay, yeah, that definitely seemed more of like an
Ada
accident.
Fish,
You can't really
had been
prevent
working
that
nearby
one.
in the same shed. She survived. The precise reason she was, I guess, further from the detonation point than the other 3 has never really been fully established, but she carried the weight of that survival for the rest of her life. Mary Fitzmaurice and Edith Copham were buried at Denny Gregg Cemetery in Swansea.
It's like
Jane Jenkins
what was
buried
it? The
at Quimgelly Cemetery.
Survivor's Guilt. Hey, Bo, guess what? Please tell me. Please tell me there's nothing there. Please tell me it's the forest that this video is about to begin with. Please. I swear, if it's another fucking explosion factory. It's rough, yeah. It sucks because at the same time, it's kind of hard to tell the person that, like, they're just in their head about it, but, because, like, they have a genuine reason to feel that guilt, if you think about it. It's just more of, they shouldn't be feeling that guilt. Because, even though, like, yeah, you feel guilty, you're the only one there, it's, like, legitimate. There's a missile factory there. They put a fucking...
Contemporary press reports describe the three women as having died as surely in the service of their country as anyone on the battlefield. The war had been over for 7 days, which that sucks. The armistice had already been signed and the shells were being dismantled. They were supposed to be just the ending of something. And the last thing they did, and the last thing that Edith Copham saw, a 19-year-old woman from Swansea in a shed in a Welsh forest on a November night, was a flash of light and then nothing. Well, it continues to get worse because we all know it was just around the corner. The Second World War opened a new layer of death on Pembury's site, and it did so from two directions simultaneously, from the air above and from inside the factory below. The Royal Ordnance
Humans'
Factory,
favorite
Pembury,
pastime,
as the site
fucking
was not
apparently,
officially
especially back
designated,
then.
employed approximately 3,000 workers during the World War II period. The majority of them, still women, still handling TNT, tetrol, and ammunition nitrate under conditions that had improved marginally from the First World War, but...
You know what I think we need to do? I think we need to give world leaders and government officials hobbies. Like, actual, genuine hobbies. Not going off on a fucking golf course and playing golf with other goddamn politicians. We need to give them actual hobbies. Maybe if they have actual, genuine interest, like genuine interest and actual hobbies, maybe they won't start wars. I'm just saying. Just saying, that might be a possibility. Maybe that's what we need. Maybe that's why everyone but them is so tired of war.
Remained acutely dangerous, we'll say. On the 10th of July 1940, a German aircraft located the factory and dropped bombs directly on the site. The attack was precise enough to be lethal. Confirmed fatalities from that single raid included William David Davies, David Verdun Evans, and Wilfred James Griffiths, all civilian workers killed. And Police Sergeant James Harvard, who was stationed at the factory, survived the initial blast but died of his wounds at Langley Hospital the following day on the 11th of July. They were on the same ground under the same bombs, and the distinction between a factory worker and a police sergeant meant nothing to the aircraft above them, the Germans. On the 1st of November 1941, the factory claimed even more lies from within. And I just want you to take a step back. Like, I'm throwing a lot at you. This is all at the same place. All of this crap that's been going down for hundreds, if not thousands of years, is all in the same place. It's like absolutely cursed. An explosion in the P14 mononitration plant.
Oh my god. The little card popped up and I could have sworn it said the incident of Dumbledore. And I'm like, you're telling me there was a tragedy named after Dumbledore? But then I realized it says something else. I can't remember what it said, but it says something else. It wasn't Dumbledore.
Triggered during an air raid alert, killed two workers, W.M. Evans and C. Bowen. Today,
you're teasing. There's no missile factory there.
Archives, while the
it's empty now. Bomb squads have to go out there sometimes because they find unexploded ordnances. Oh, okay. Well, I guess that's good. It sucks that they're still finding some unexploded ones, but you know what? At least they finally, hopefully, learn their lesson, and they're not gonna put another one there. Dumbledore!
From the time mentioned their deaths briefly, treating them as another incident in the factory's long wartime history. Simultaneously, a few miles away along the coast, Royal Air Force Pembury had been constructed in 1937 and opened formally on the 6th of May 1940, operating under Training Command and then under Fighter Command to provide air defense over South Wales during the Battle of Britain. Because the airfield functioned primarily as a training base, it was far more accident-prone than operational stations, trainee pilots navigating the demanding maneuvers in all-weather conditions over a coastline they did not know, and an aircraft they were still learning to fly, which, gonna be real with you, our aircraft were not... It was more like held together with hopes and dreams, but they died with a regularity that is recorded in a painful detail in the memorial research held by People's Collection Wales. On the 17th of September 1940, a Handley Page Hampton aircraft from 14th OTU crashed on the edge of the Gudress Marshes directly adjacent to the Pembury area, killing all 4 crew members, all of whom were subsequently buried locally. Polish Air Force pilots who trained and flew from Pembury added their own names to the fatal accident records of that airfield. Men who had already survived the invasion of their country only to die in training accidents on the coast of southwest Wales. The training accidents at RAF Pembury were not always the result of
no
weather
wonder
or
this
mechanical
area
failure,
is
though,
fucking
which
haunted.
gets a bit weird.
I believe
Local
it.
records and the
With
People's Collection Wales documentation.
With everything going on, No wonder there's a forest here that is hella haunted. Are you kidding me with all these deaths? Especially in this one location, this in that one location there was already so many. They did finally learn not to have explosives in 1968. It took a while, but you know what? At least we got there before the early 2000s because if you know we were still in the 2000s, like early 2000s, right? Still like not learning this lesson at that point. I think there's a bigger issue going on than just that one area.
Note a training incident in 1944 in which a pilot opened fire on the tug aircraft during an air gunnery exercise, shooting down the tow plane rather than the target drogue being trailed behind it. The crew of the tug aircraft died in the skies that were supposed to be safe on a range over a coastline that had never needed much assistance finding its dead. The bunkers that dot the woodland at Pembrey County Park today, the low brick structures half hidden by the pines, the earthen tunnels, the pillboxes that visitors sometimes photograph without knowing what they were for, are the physical remains of all of this. They were built by the dead, they were worked beside by the dead, and they remain in the forest long after everyone who built them is already gone. The formal
They just
industrial
left
use
him
of
there?
Pembrey Burrows
I
ended
guess
in the
people
decades
do
after
that
the Second
sometimes,
World
yeah.
War, and the site was gradually
Especially with war
transformed into the
sites.
county park that visitors walk through today. But the coastline of Kievan Sheridan, as
They
if
put a
following
fucking
a
county
logic
park there?
entirely its own, did not stop producing its peculiar headlines, because why would it? In 1996, an unregistered yacht that had sailed from Morocco was blown ashore on Kievan Sheridan Beach, its destination unknown and its registration absent. When the vessel was examined, authorities found
Sounds like
on
something
board
out of
a
a spy
substantial
movie.
quantity of large, sealed, watertight packs of cannabis resin with a street
Sounds
value
like a
of around 800 pounds. As in,
sounds
like,
like a
British
spy
money.
movie.
You know, they're 800
Like a
pounds.
drug
A
bust in
figure
a spy
equivalent to
movie.
approximately 2 million in present-day money. The modern wreckers, it seemed, had updated their cargo. The beach that had swallowed rum, sugar, and brandy for 2 centuries had now claimed a narcotics shipment, and the pattern that defines this coast, things of value arriving from the sea on this specific stretch of sand, has not changed in the slightest. In 2016, the war that had officially ended in 1945 made one more appearance, if you can believe it, and you thought World War II wouldn't show back up. A suspected unexploded Second World War device was found
Oh,
washed up
wow.
on the beach at Kievan Sheridan
Oh,
and reported
shit,
to
that-
authorities.
that
Army
looks like
bomb
it would pack a
disposal
punch,
specialists
too.
were called to the
I
site
don't know
and
bombs,
carried
so
out
I'm not
a controlled
I have
detonation
no
on
idea.
the sand. A deliberate explosion on a beach that had
But you know, the Ooga Booga brain is saying big size equal big boom. So that's what my Ooga Booga brain says. I don't really have a bomb expert brain though.
absorbing accidental ones for over a century. This time,
no bombs.
we got them. The BBC confirmed the controlled blast with Kievan Sheridan temporarily cordoned off while the disposal team did their work. The ordnance had been lying somewhere in the Bristol Channel or beneath the sand since the 1940s. 70 years of tide had finally brought it to the surface. But now we arrive at what people have been experiencing in these woods, because after everything that you've heard,
Okay.
if you thought there wasn't just weird
Guys, it is finally, we have arrived at the forest segment. Let's hear about the haunted forest, because we've already heard about all the goddamn tragedies. These poor
crap
people,
that
I
people were seeing
swear.
out there, well then, I don't know, maybe you partook in the cannabis resin. But not in the 1800s, though, not during wartime, but actually in recent decades is when you did it, because it's still happening. So this is the
Big
present
boom.
era now. After the factories were demolished and the
Big
runways were
boom.
decommissioned and the site had been transformed into a county park and open to the public, the reported phenomena at Pembrey Forest fall into several distinct categories. And what is notable about them is that they correspond with troubling specificity to the different historical events that took place here. The oldest and most persistent category of report involves lanterns or lights seen moving along the tree line or the beach edge at night. Not flashlights, not car headlights, but individual moving points of light, orange or yellowish, behaving in ways inconsistent with a
Yeah,
person
just like-
walking with a torch.
Just like how the bandits were luring in the ships, and like, you know, the ships would wreck because of the shoreline, and like, yeah, they were cutting their fingers, taking their fingers in the rings, and all the cargo, and then the residents would come on up and be like, ooh, free drinks, free drinks, and then they would just drink themselves into a stupor, or some of them drunk themselves to death, I guess. like, okay,
which
so
the
that's where
correspondence
this
to the
comes through.
where the box method of using lanterns to lure ships is pretty obvious here. And whether you frame
Mm-hmm.
it that as a spectral echo or atmospheric coincidence, the reports persist and predate widespread public knowledge of the wrecking history. Ghost ships have been reported offshore, shadowy vessels appearing in the sea mist or low-lying fog near Sheridan at dusk or in the hours before dawn, accompanied in some accounts by sounds, crashing timber, voices shouting, and what witnesses describe as a language they cannot
Oh.
identify, and then silence. These reports come not from organized ghost tours, but just from local fishermen, late night walkers, and
So
coastal.
so yeah, it's almost like it seems so far based off of the two hauntings he mentioned in particular so far. Yeah, they seem to be following like very distinct historical events. See, that's what I find interesting about genuine hauntings is sometimes it always connects back to like historical stuff or stuff that happened in the past. It's almost like sometimes there's something so tragic or something so just I don't know, like brimmed with emotion or whatever you want to call it, right? That like it just almost like imprints itself in that area. You know what I mean? It just imprints itself there.
Residents. The figure of a small girl, pale, soaking wet, motionless, that has been reported near the
What's she doing?
shoreline
She's like,
into the forest on multiple independent occasions. No
she
account.
she looks like she's trying to flip off the photographer, but the photographer didn't quite get the finger, so he got her going like okay. Eh. I tried to do it, but my hand tracking wasn't cooperating.
Of this figure describes his movement towards the witness. Every account describes stillness, presence, and then absence. The figure does not chase anyone, it simply stands in the dark and then disappears when you look directly at it. In the deeper sections of the woodland, where the factory buildings once stood and where the blast mounds still rise from the forest floor, the reports change character entirely. Here, witnesses describe figures
Oh,
that are burned
excuse
or
me?
appear burned, faces and hands that seem darkened or damaged in ways that do not correspond with normal human features. They are seen briefly in the peripheral vision or at the edge of a flashlight's range, and they do not approach. Some witnesses report a phantom smell in these areas, a chemical burn, sulfur, or acrid industrial
Oh,
odor
okay.
that has no source in the present-day landscape,
It's
but
like the burn
corresponds
victims.
precisely
Or
to the
the
smell
the victims
of
in the
cordite and
explosions.
TNT manufacturing. A Forestry Ranger's log from the late 1970s recorded an account from two cyclists passing through the woodland in broad daylight who describe a man stumbling through the trees towards the path, upright, moving, apparently conscious, smoke visibly rising from his body and the smell of
Yeah.
burnt cloth around him. The encounter happened in full daylight in a forest where there was no fire. No follow-up investigation is recorded in the log, and I guess that's just where that ends. But in 1998, a photographer from Cardiff who
No one wanted
had
to
come
follow it
to
up.
document the old bunker architecture for a personal project later developed his film and found in one frame showing a mossy bunker entrance the distinct upper body of a figure pressed against the tree line
Can
to
you
one
show
side.
that?
A figure that appeared burned, that had not been visible to him when he took the photograph, and that he was certain had not been there. The image was examined informally by people familiar with the site's history. No conclusion was reached, and the photographer did not return because he just was like, no, I'm good. But among the reported accounts,
But photograph, like if he took a photograph, right? Ads about to start in a moment. I'll talk about it when ad starts. But yeah, it's like
from
like
named
where's the
witnesses,
photograph?
one that has circulated locally involves a man referred to as Gareth, who in 2006 was walking near the old Royal Ordnance factory site with his teenage daughter. They noticed a figure ahead of them on the path wearing what appeared to be scorched, tattered clothing, face and hands severely charred in a way that read as damage rather than shadow. When Gareth called out, concerned the person was injured, the figure briefly turned its head in acknowledgement but kept walking. Then, it was simply absent from a straight open section of the path where there was nowhere to go. But both of them noticed in the silence that followed was the smell, charred wood, and something chemical underneath it.
Yeah,
Present for a
like
moment,
that's all
and then
relating. That's all relating to the burn victims. Okay, ads going right now. I'm gonna pause for everybody in ads. It's a trust me, bro moment. Literally, like it's like you said you grabbed a photograph. So I mean, in most like situations, I wouldn't fault somebody for not taking a photograph or a video because the amount of times I've seen some wild shit and it's never once occurred to me to actually record it or take a picture of it. until like way, way, way later, way past that time. So it's like, okay, I get it if you didn't take it, but he took it. He literally said he saw it in the photograph. Later on, granted, but he saw it in a photograph he took. So why not share that photograph? If the results were inconclusive by those that know the area, then why not show the photograph to everybody else? You know? Like, if it's already taken and no one knows the results, people do that on the internet all the time, even now. Like, they're like, shit, I don't know if it's haunted or what, but, like, check this out, you know? And sometimes they're, like, faking it for views, but, like, a lot of the times, they just, yeah, it's a genuine, like, hey, I have no idea if this is, like what's going on here, but this is kind of weird. Me too, don't think about it until later. Yeah, it's one of those things where it's like, some people use it as a I got you moment, but I don't really think it's the I got you moment that they think it is. When somebody says that something happened to them, but if they don't have any, like, photo or video proof, that doesn't necessarily mean that it didn't happen. Yeah, they might be telling tall tales, that's sure, yeah, that's a good possibility still, granted. But, like, you can't just use the fact that they didn't record it or take a picture of it as a I got you moment, because, if you guys have ever, like, I feel like most people, when they see something shocking or surprising or, like, scary initially, their first thought isn't, I need to record this. I need to, like, photograph this. Some people do think like that. I think it's a little strange, but at the same time, like, it doesn't hurt anybody. So, like, yeah, it's like, okay, that's not an I got you moment. It could still happen. But this guy got actual photo proof. I want to see the photo proof. I'm curious. Granted, like, if this is true, I definitely think that this is all, like, the burn victims. 100%. Based off of everything we've heard. All of the victims that were caught in the explosion, like, they could have been hit with shrapnel, obviously, like, charred, burned alive. Then on top of that, with the woods, like, I feel like this is just as obvious as the lantern one on what this is correlating with. You know what I mean? So, yeah, no, this is definitely the burn victims. Also, welcome back from ads. We are gonna go ahead and resume. We waited. I was just yapping about, why I think this guy should have showed me the picture. Or why the photographer should have grabbed the picture of everything. It looks like a volatile zombie in Dying Light. You know what? I could see it. Like an artsy version of it. Like somebody like painting it instead.
Just completely dispersed.
This is definitely a really creepy drawing, though.
Reported local testimony and has been independently archived, but it sits in the same category as several others, describing identical sensory details: scorching, chemical smells, a figure that acknowledges before vanishing, that emerged independently from different people, or to different people, across different years. One account stands apart even with this company. In the mid-1990s, a schoolboy was mapping old munition bunkers in Pembrey Forest as part of a school project. He entered one of the darker concrete chambers alone, working by flashlight. The smell reached him first, a combination of chemical burn and something organic and decaying that had no visible source in the empty chamber.
It's
then
like phantom
pressed
smells.
against the concrete wall, a dark red-brown handprint,
Never mind.
human in shape, stained into the surface in a way that suggested it had been there for decades. While he was processing what he was looking at, something else would take place. He described it later as a vivid, total sensory experience, a blinding flash of light, and then the perception, not imagined but felt physically on his skin, of heat, of his clothing burning away, of his body being engulfed in flames. He ran into the chamber screaming, and when people outside reached him, he was physically unharmed. There were no burns.
Okay,
physically
unharmed. Yeah, like, imagine how terrifying that would be. Like, you're already, like, confused by this weird, like, smelly, like, handprint that's, like, charred in there. And then, like, you basically experience the entire sensation of being in an explosion without being in the explosion. Because at least when you're in the explosion, there's a point in time where you're not gonna feel that pain no more. Because at a certain point, like, your nerve endings, they're not gonna function. You know what I mean? So, at least for, like, if you're actually in it, there's a point where the pain stops. But that was, like, straight phantom pain. That, yeah, no, that would be scary. Phantom pain could be crazy. Yeah, that's just straight up, that's
But
terrifying.
whatever had happened to him had
I think that's
happened
more scary
entirely
than seeing a
within his own
ghost, to be
perception. He
honest.
did not return to complete his project, as none of us would, and this account appears in the
Yes?
documented paranormal testimony associated with the site, but has not been independently verified in the public archives. And how are you really supposed to verify it? I mean, you could ask him, sure, but that's about it. But not all of what has happened and been encountered in Pimbury Forest maps onto the site's industrial and maritime history. In the early 2000s, two council forestry workers, named in local paranormal records as Colin Jenkins and David Evans, were clearing paths in the deeper conifer section of the woodland when they became aware of something watching them from between the trees. What they described subsequently was not a figure in scorched clothing, not a pale, drenched child, not moving light.
What?
It was something upright, standing between 6 to 7 feet. Is Bigfoot covered in dark? Is this really Bigfoot? Covered in dark hair with arms that hung past its knees. The head was elongated. The muzzle, they used that word, was narrow, rising from the.
You know what? No. The slight, like, annoyance in his voice when he says that, I feel it. I do. I feel that.
Skull were two distinct projections that both of them independently described as horn-like. It watched them in silence, and then it was gone.
I don't know,
It reappeared from a different
so many
position in the trees, which would be
Bigfoots.
horrifying, and then it did not return. Neither man had the framework of what they had just encountered. The closest analog in documented British paranormal
That is
history
wild.
is the entity associated with the Hexham Heads case in Northumberland in the 1970s. Ancient
What the fuck is that? What is that? Those kind of look like rocks with faces. Two heads that have caused, I'm pretty sure, all the controversy, but it almost kind of, because of the wear on the, like, you know, with, like, the photograph, it looks like it's becoming an eye, that L. Who knows best about the mystery? The ornamental heads dug up in the garden. Potatoes. The potatoes, guys. Bigfoot wanted to check out the site too, for real. Bigfoot wants to check out every site. I swear, I think Bigfoot is looking for companions or something. Because I feel like almost every Scary Woods video I see always mentions Bigfoot at least once. At least one time. At least. And, like, I get it, Bigfoot's probably just a curious guy, but come on, dude. Like, you gotta stop making everything about yourself, okay? We need to see other hauntings and other cryptids and other things. You know, you gotta give other things a spotlight, Bigfoot. Stop putting yourself in everything, please. Would appreciate. Thank you. This guy checks all the boxes to keep brain engaged. Plus, you love all he adds on his own humor and tidbits. Right? I do like it, too. And then on top of it's like, you know what? Yeah, no. I feel you, dude. It's good. Bigfoot's a world traveler. He really do be. He really do. Somehow it's like all over the US, basically. Like, anywhere but a desert. Actually, no. He's been sighted in a desert. Never mind. That goes out the window. Never mind. Big. He's way cooler. He has reliability. True. Yeah, he definitely has reliability. I see that. Well, yeah, for him. We actually have two versions? Well, there's like... Isn't the Yeti considered like a different, like, type of Bigfoot? You know, similar to how, like, you know, you have like wolves, and then you have like wolves that live in the Arctic, like Arctic wolves, you know what I mean? Similar with like foxes and rabbits and, you know, that kind of stuff. So, or not rabbits, I should say hares, because they're a little different. He's got crazy miles with American Airlines. Yeah, I mean, you know, he used to fly Spirit, but you know they kind of got shut down. So he needed to switch somewhere, and thankfully, American Airlines offered to convert his Spirit Airlines miles to American Airlines, and he was very appreciative of that. Bigfoot is Mr. Worldwide. He is.
Carved stone objects whose
Relatability, but reliability
excavation
works too.
preceded multiple
Yeah,
independent
yeah, I read
sightings
that wrong.
of half human, half animal horned figures. And also, what was that thing? The devil's footprints? I think I covered it actually. Basically, just footprints all over town that didn't make any sense. And then it left town, and it was in areas that shouldn't have been. Anyways, so whether the similarity is meaningful, coincidental, or simply two frightened men reaching for any description that fitted their eyes and had registered is a
Which is
question that
possible.
record does not answer. And then there are the accounts from people who had no
That
prior knowledge of the
that
site's
looks
history.
cool.
A hiker who parked at Pembrey County Park and walked into the forest on a clear.
Okay, hold up. But before you possibly ruin this for me, can we just admire how like cool that looks? So cool. But there's a version where it has a horse slash cow head. Sounds like a reverse centaur or like a minotaur. You only flew Spirit twice, Frontier twice, and JetBlue twice. I've never flown Spirit, JetBlue, or American Airlines. I've flown Southwest. I think out of all the airlines I've flown, Southwest is probably my favorite, just because they like it. Um, but I've also flown United, and I've flown on the tip of my tongue Frontier. I've flown Frontier. I did not like Frontier or United. Every time I was on one of their planes, I thought I was gonna have like a fucking like you know panic attack every single time. I swear. Southwest and Delta are the only two you've been on. I have made a rule for myself. I will never fly Delta. I will never ever fly Delta. It's a rule I have. I'm sorry. And it started with a joke because like there's a whole joke where like, hey, they're gonna frame you for murder. But I just in general, it seems like Delta is just kind of doesn't seem like a great experience. Yeah, it's like a reverse centaur and like really tall. You've flown them all, pretty much. Spirit was bad. I could imagine because I feel like isn't like Spirit was more of like the budget out of all of the airlines. It was like the budget airline. You should fly Ryan Air. Why does that sound like a made up airline? You know, like United? I did not like United. No. No, because United put me on one of those airplanes that has so it has like two seats, right? On the very far rows, like the outside rows. And then you have the one inside row that has like a shit ton of seats. There's like 6 or 8 seats or something like that. But there was a shit ton of seats in the center. And I was put dead center in the middle of it, and it was just me traveling. So I'm in between this whole row of just complete strangers, and the whole time inside, I'm genuinely like, I want to leave. I need to get off this fucking plane. I can't be on this plane anymore. I was genuinely like having like a full blown like, or at least I was trying to keep it like you know down because sorry, I hit the mic. I was in between people, so I was trying to keep it like internal as the best as I could. Oh, like 777. Yeah, something like that. It was I don't know, but just off like the moment I'm put on one of those planes, I'm immediately like I'm never flying this fucking airline again. I'm sorry. I can't. I can't. I would much rather the 4 seats on each side. The 4 or 3 seats on each side, or maybe like 2 seats on like on the sides, and then maybe like 2 or 3 seats in the center. I can do that. That's fine. But you start adding like a shit ton of seats in the center, and you put me directly in the middle of a bunch of strangers. I'm gonna freak the fuck out. I'm sorry. I can't. I can't do that one. No. It's a European airline, very famous for having crazy incidents and mildly interesting pilot choices. You know what? That just sounds like they include entertainment with your flight. That's what that sounds like. If it's like random crazy incidences that like you won't get dragged into, then that's just entertainment on your flight at that point. You know what I mean? That's fine. Just entertainment. Your mother flew United, so your bias Delta was okay. That's fair. That's fair. Boke, that's when you read the crazy fairy ex vampire smut book in front of a praying nun. Unfortunately, I didn't have a praying nun. I had like an old I think she was Latino. I had an old Latino woman next to me, and then she was traveling with I want to say like grandson or son. I don't know. Grandson or son possibly. And then on the other side of me, there was like I just remember them being obnoxious. I just remember them being super obnoxious. I don't even remember who they were or what they looked like. I just remember them making a lot of fucking noise, and they were just very obnoxious during the whole fucking flight. Like, could not calm down. The old lady next to me though, she was chill. I liked her. She was really cool. I liked her. But like, yeah, no, the people, no, mm mm, no. Smut book reviews one. I probably wouldn't do smut book reviews just because I don't want to attract some of those people. Some of those people get a little too much, a little too chaotic. The incident with Ryanair was a window popped open and a passenger got sucked out. And he spent 5 minutes stuck until he was pulled back before they what? Like, were they at least trying to help, or were they, like, just, like, watching him as he was hanging out, like, basically hanging on for his dear life? Very fucking sorry for this. Would you like to rebook this flight for free? It's like, yeah, I don't know. At that point, I don't think I want to rebook a flight. I think I'll pass. Okay, we should probably continue. I kind of got a little off track. I'm
Her
sorry.
afternoon described an overwhelming and sudden feeling of grief, not fear, specifically like grief, that came on without any warning in a section of the woodland and disappeared the moment they stepped back onto the main path. They later learned they had been standing on the site of one of those factory buildings. A camper who set up near the eastern end of the site reported walking in the early hours to the distinct and unmistakable sound of a child crying some distance away in the trees. When they investigated, there was nobody there. They had not previously been told about Adeline at this point, but maybe. These are the accounts that deserve the closest attention, not because they are the most extraordinary, but because the experiences described contain details that closely match documented events
I think that's actually
the witnesses
a good
had no
bet,
apparent way of knowing. Today, organized paranormal investigation events are run commercially at Pembury Woods by operators including Haunting Nights, who have documented the site specifically as one of the most credibly haunted locations in Wales.
Okay, well, we still had some people that tried to market it
during these structured overnight investigations. Accounts that sit alongside the independent, unsolicited
can't
reports
really
from
blame them
hikers
too much for
and
that,
campers,
especially in
as well as
today's
dog
economy.
walkers who simply went into the forest on the Welsh coast and came back out, describing something they could not fully account for. Now, obviously, there's going to be quite a few theories as to what's going on. Maybe the land is cursed. This is cursed, that is cursed. However, this land legitimately seems cursed. The main first theory, I guess we'll discuss.
Normally, that is creepy. But normally, yes. If you have that many tragedies, and some of those tragedies are just that consistent with this one area, I mean, I can't fault anybody for thinking it's cursed, because at this point, even I'm thinking it's cursed. I wouldn't consider myself a super skeptical person, though. I'm kind of like the in-between of like, hey, you throw enough evidence at me, and I'm like, you know what? See what you're talking about. I may not go full, like, extremist with it, but I'm like, you know what? I can see where you're coming from. But yeah, no, this place, definitely cursed. Like, the amount, like, the explosion factories, guys. The explosion factories. Like, how does that happen that many times? Like, it happened over 3 times. Over 3 times. I think it was, like, 4 or 5 times it happened. That is insane. Like, yeah, no, this place is cursed.
It's just pareidolia and the
100%.
prime brain. This is the most
I think
straightforward, rational explanation for
the
many of the visual
sailors that
reports at Pimbury,
crashed
and it draws on
in the
well-documented
shores at one
psychological
time cursed it.
mechanisms. Pareidolia is the brain's tendency to perceive meaningful patterns, especially human faces and figures, and ambiguous stimuli. It's basically how our brains work. It's what we're designed to do. It's not really a malfunction, it's just kind of a feature. Researchers at Johns Hopkins and other institutions have described it as the product of evolved threat detection systems in the human brain, systems that are calibrated to err on the side.
I think that, yeah, some of the sightings could have been pareidolia, but I think it depends. I think it depends on the lighting. If it's like in broad fucking daylight or like early morning, I don't think that you could say pareidolia. Unless they're like, you know, a far distance away, then maybe, yeah. If they're a far distance away. But if like for example, some of like the hikers and that kind of stuff, like coming upon these people and literally offering help to these people, right? Like they're getting pretty close. I feel like at a certain distance, unless it's like dark, you would be able to tell the difference between a tree and a person. You know what I mean? I would hope, at least. I would
false
hope.
positives because missing a real threat is more dangerous than imagining one isn't there. In a dense, dark pine forest, pareidolia operates powerfully. Every gap between trees becomes a potential silhouette. Every shadow
like
that
a
moves
dark
in the wind
forest,
becomes a figure.
very
Every
dense.
branch
Yeah,
seen
yeah,
in
I can see
peripheral
that.
vision becomes a hand. When you add the fact that many visitors enter Pimbury Forest already knowing its history, already cognitively primed by ghost tour briefings and articles like this one that have been read, and also me now officially infesting your brain telling you about it, the brain's tendency to impose pattern on ambiguity is dramatically amplified. A scientific term for this is the nocebo response. Expectation of something disturbing creates a heightened state of vigilance that makes disturbing interpretations of neutral stimuli more likely. This explanation accounts for a significant portion of the Pembury reports, particularly the visual ones. The second theory, infrasound and the coastal wind sound frequencies below approximately 20 hertz, or at least below this threshold of conscious human hearing, are known as infrasound, and they are produced naturally by several of the conditions that exist at Pembury simultaneously. When moving through dense coastal pine forest generates infrasound. The interaction of large wave action with the beach and shallow sandbanks generate infrasound. Large enclosed spaces, brick bunkers, earthen tunnels, blast chambers act as resonant cavities that amplify and channel, you guessed it,
and there's probably
infrasound.
A lot of those.
Research published in journals confirmed that near threshold infrasound can actually alter activity in brain regions responsible for emotional and autonomic regulation, producing effects
you know what, this
including
one's
sudden onset
fascinating.
dread, a sense of presence, mild visual disturbances in the peripheral vision, and unexplained emotional responses. You do not hear infrasound consciously. You feel it as a weight in your chest and as an irrational urgency to leave, as a cold wash of anxiety that arrives without a visible cause and vanishes just as inexplicably. Pembury Forest, caught between the open Bristol Channel and the inland terrain of Carmarthenshire, with its old factory bunkers still embedded in the ground, is a landscape architecturally suited to generate...
I mean, based off of, like, the history that we learned in this video of this area, like, this region, yeah, there has to be, like, a lot of bunkers. A lot of bunkers, especially with his history in wartime. 100%. So, yeah, there would be a lot of bunkers that, you know, infrasound could, generate.
The sudden
and there was
dread
that one.
By visitors, the feeling of being watched, the overwhelming grief, the urgent need to leave a specific location maps onto what the published science says infrasound can produce. Another theory that has arisen is maybe like chemical residue in the ground, such as TNT, tetryl, chordate, and ammonium nitrate, were manufactured and stored at Pembury burrows across two world wars over a period spanning several decades, may have somewhat of an effect, as you might have guessed. These are not substances that disappear cleanly when a factory blows up or maybe is demolished. They contaminate soil over long timescales. Blows up or maybe is demolished.
Beautiful.
They contaminate soil.
I wish I could get my voice to do that
scales.
properly.
And some of their volatile components, the elements that give TNT and cordite their characteristic smell, can be released from contaminated ground under very specific temperatures and pressure conditions, particularly in warm weather after rain, or when you disturb maybe some soil that fell over it. The phantom chemical smells reported by investigators spending extended time in the deeper woodland sections of Pembrey County Park may not be supernatural in origin. They may just be the ground releasing what it was saturated with, a chemical memory of the factory rising through the soil under the pine trees decades after.
That may or may not be a sound that's going to replay in my mind for like a while until I find like a different thing that just gets stuck in my head instead, which who knows when that's gonna happen, really.
To the buildings above it were
Who
torn
knows?
down. Another theory is the stone tape. Moving from the rational into the more speculative, the stone tape theory proposes that physical environments can, under conditions not yet scientifically understood, record and replay intense emotional or traumatic events.
Yeah.
The fabric of this location, its stone.
That's what I was talking about, guys. I think this theory especially is a really interesting theory because it's a theory that's fascinating enough for scientists to be like, you know what? We need to test that, but not quite tested enough for it to be kind of like very like, I don't know, kind of mysterious or almost an explanation for like ghost in a way, like most ghost activity. Because like this is what most ghost activity ends up going to when you're getting super deep into the theories is this. Didn't know that was the name of it though. But yeah, that's what I was talking about before, because like all of the hauntings and everything, they're all related to past events, especially the events that were very traumatizing for people, or just very memorable, I guess, for some people. But yeah, so it's like this theory. I like this theory.
Its brick can absorb the imprint of extreme human experience and release fragments of that imprint under conditions that allow sensitive individuals to perceive it. Now, one of the things about this is we don't really necessarily understand consciousness as far as humanity is concerned, I guess the best way to put it. I'm not saying that, we have so much control over the land and things, but, you know what? Here's my most favorite example of this. The human experience. What is it, right? What can we do? What can we not do? How can we influence the environment around us? How can we not influence the environment around us? One of the more interesting aspects of human consciousness is if you take a quantum number like that randomly generates, right? Because even a number like a random number generator, it's not as random as like say a quantum random number generator. If you put a person apparently next to it through tests that they've done and tell them to think about a number, that number is much more likely to be randomly generated. Why? It's a very good question. We don't know why. It's sort of like when we observe.
Wait, like that's a genuine test? So you have a quantum random number generator, which is more random than even a regular random number generator. And you put a person next to it, you have them think of a random number themselves, and most of the time that ends up being the number that it chooses. That's pretty insane, if that's the case. If that's a genuine actual study, here, probably didn't need to go that far back.
Why? It's a very good question. We don't know why.
Yeah.
It's sort of like when we observe the quantum field, or not quantum field, or quantum physics of specific tests, the outcomes change because we observed it. There's something I believe personally, whether you believe in God, whether you believe in an afterlife, whether you believe in the human ability to control energy, it's kind of an interesting concept. It's hard to say if it really exists or not, but what appears, I think, more, if you want to take a more safe route on a discussion of that, we just simply don't know. That's all it really is. Like, you get a lot of people,
Yeah, so, it's not, fully tested. We really, don't know any of it, right? At all. But, still really fascinating. And it's one of those, things where it's all okay, this could be a very large series of coincidences. But the thing is once a coincidence happens enough time, is it really a coincidence anymore? At that point? But yeah, no, it's very fascinating. And another thing that I just thought of is, what if, this is me reaching, this is a very far theory, it's not really one I necessarily believe in, but I think would be kind of interesting, is, the concept of magic. Well, what if we end up eventually one day actually creating that concept of, mana or magic, simply because it becomes what our brain is and it's it gets impacted. Similar to the random number generator, just on a much larger and much more influential scale. I don't know. that's like a very far-fetched thing that I'm saying, and not necessarily believe in it, but I think that would be cool if like something like that did happen, but that's just because, I like fantasy shit and I like magic. So maybe that's
Individuals
why.
on a site where they read
But
something
yeah,
get
I
it.
think that'd be
Anyways,
cool.
they're very very sure of themselves. They're very sure of what they can see, what they can touch, what they can feel, what they can perceive, and that's it. And that's the world around them. And they're like, nope, that's all that exists. That's all that could possibly exist. There's nothing else beyond my perception that could possibly. And it's like, bro, you know how many dimensions there are? There's the fourth dimension. We can barely perceive the fourth dimension. It's just there's so many things. I think it's more important in life to just kind of understand there's so many things that you don't know. What is it? 1% is what you know, 2% is what you don't know, or you know that you don't know, and 97% is what you don't know, what you don't know. That's the human experience right there. We just
I
don't know what we
mean,
don't know. So
I kind
could
of
something be
agree.
imprinted? I know it sounds real like woo woo and all that stuff, but
I kind
maybe.
of agree
I mean,
with
why
them there.
couldn't it? There's a lot of things that we don't understand about the universe in general. There's a lot of things we don't understand about our unconsciousness or what we're capable of, or why if you put us next
Can't
to
really,
a
you can't
quantum
throw
random
it
number
out
generator,
of
does that
like,
number come up more? Which I wish I
possibility,
could
like the
remember where I
realm of
read that. But
possibility.
anyways, it's an
It
interesting
may not
idea.
be factual.
I approach life with an understanding that there's just a lot of crap I don't know. And anybody who approaches life as like, oh, it's open and shut, I know everything, that's the true idiot. So anyways, Pembury Force is one of the most compelling possible test cases for the theory of basically the imprinting of human experiences in the British Isles, not because of the ghost stories being particularly dramatic, but because of the chronological density and variety of all the trauma in the area. You have centuries of shipwreck murder embedded in the sand. You have factory explosions that killed teenagers in 1882. You have workers who
That
burned
gets
from the
embedded in
inside
the
out from
sand.
TNT poisoning. You have women killed by
Or not
bombs
sand,
1
but
week
yeah,
after the war
the
ended.
ground.
You have
Basically.
pilots who crashed within yards of the runway who were trying to reach it. All of it in the same small patch of coastal Wales. If any location were to produce residual imprints of this kind, Pembury has given the ground enough material to work with. Under this framework, the apparitions
more
reported here
material
are not
than it
thinking
should have.
aware entities. They are recordings, fragments of the past playing back on a loop, the equivalent of light reaching us from a star that has burned out centuries ago, possibly even millions of years. The other kind of theories in all this is really it's an intelligent haunting. This alternative paranormal framework takes a different position mostly, where the stone tape theory kind of treats the hauntings as passive recordings. The intelligent haunting hypothesis proposes that the figures reported in Pembury Force are aware.
I feel like the intelligent haunting, that's definitely more far reaching than the stone tape. Way more. So I feel like the stone tape is at least grounded in at least somewhat of the realm of possibility, right? Because like you said, we don't know. So it's like, yeah, it's possible. Because we don't know. So yeah, it is possible. But with this one, it's like, I don't know. We're gonna see what he says. But like, I don't know how much evidence there really is for this to be like a more plausible theory. I guess that's probably why he has it as number 5. Imagine one day Boke wakes up so angry she becomes a low tier fox. You know what? I will let you know. I will run this. I will run this experiment for you. Even though it's not a very good experiment, because I don't really have a control. I don't really have a control factor. Yeah, I like the ground retaining life, one theory-wise. Yeah, exactly, because it's like, not only is it like a little bit plausible, but it's just kind of like, it's very fascinating to think that that is like something that happens. You know what I mean? Like, they almost like expectations, or like, the history of what happened is just so strong that it just embeds itself there. You know what I mean? And it's almost like a record. I think that's really fascinating. You know what I mean?
That they are perceiving the living,
I
and
like
that they
that theory,
respond
too.
to the presence of them, and that in some cases they actively attempt
Am I getting
interaction
away,
or communication. The specific detail
I know,
that
I'm
supports
covering
this
him.
framework over the residual haunting model is the consistency with which some reported apparitions appear to track witnesses moving between trees in the correspondence with the witness's own movement, appearing to maintain awareness of being observed. A recording does not track you. A recording plays the same sequence regardless of whether anyone is watching. The figures described as following or watching witnesses in the deeper sections of Pimbury Forest are, by the accounts of those who report them, doing something more interactive than replaying a fixed sequence. Whether this reflects intelligence.
Okay. I just want to say, based off of that, I feel like intelligent haunting is basically the stone tape theory, but the only difference is it leans into it more. Because, like, for example, when they were talking about scientists notice when they observe things, they don't always react the way expected. Like, they react differently when they are observed. So what if these are stonewall tapes, but hold up, I looked at chat and that kind of, sorry. my train of thought almost got lost. But because the tapes are being observed, now they're changing. Because they're being observed. So I feel like it just leans more into that theory now that, like, I heard what he said. Because it's like, well, if they're reacting to being observed, what's to say that it just doesn't lean into more of the other theory, right? It just goes deeper than what we thought. And, like we said, we don't know, so it's possible.
Intelligence instinct, or simply the brain's pattern detection system imposing agency onto the shadows is the detail that kind of divides the two paranormal explanations. So really, what could it be then? Well, this is the question that the evidence ultimately refuses to fully answer. It is worth being honest about why, though. The rational theories, pareidolia, infrasound, chemical residue, psychological priming, account convincingly for the majority of the visual and sensory reports at Pimbury. I mean, just to be honest with you, they do. They are not dismissive explanations. They are scientifically supported frameworks that take the experiences of visitors seriously enough to look for real causes. If you spend extended time in a dense coastal pine forest built on decades of industrial chemical contamination, generating infrasound through the interaction of sea wind and enclosed spaces, and a state of cognitive priming from the history that you have just been told, you're going to have unusual experiences. That is not speculation. That is just what the science predicts. But the rational theories have a specific problem, and it is the one raised at the beginning of this account. The people who had no prior knowledge. The hiker who felt overwhelming grief in a specific section of the woodland before they knew what had happened there.
Yeah, like, if they went to that bunker, like for the Phantom Pain guy, they went to that bunker and they did not know that was like explosions or anything like that, and he just saw the handprint and then started feeling the sensation of being like blown up or being in a massive explosion, right? Like, that's not something that you just, you know, you kind of have to, it's like a once in a lifetime kind of experience, and not in the good way, as, you know, you imagine. So it's like, for one, he wouldn't know what it would feel like getting blown up, right? It would make sense. He wouldn't know what it would feel like to be in an explosion. I hope not, at least. I really hope not. And yeah, he didn't know any history about the place, so there would be no, like, priming. Sorry, I don't know. It's just like...
camper who heard a child crying in the trees before they knew he was buried in the churchyard just 200
that's my commentary to you right now.
These accounts, if taken at face value, require an explanation that goes beyond psychological priming, because priming requires prior information, and prior information did not exist in these cases. There are two ways, really, to handle this. The first is to note that these are self-reported accounts. The memory is reconstructive rather than accurate, and that people commonly misremember the sequence of learning information, believing they experienced something
the brain
before
is very
being told
unreliable.
about it, when in fact they had already absorbed it unconsciously. This is a legitimate methodological concern. Human memory is not a recording. It is a story the brain tells itself, and the story does change over time. The second way to handle these accounts is to consider the possibility that Pimbury Forest is something the existing scientific framework does not yet have adequate tools to fully explain, that 3 centuries of concentrated violent death on a single stretch of coastal Welsh ground may have produced something in the physical environment, some property of the land
put it like that,
the living cannot yet measure, but occasionally perceive, and that occasionally those perceptions are accurate.
Oh my god, why did that actually kind of scare me?
Pimbury were real. Their names remain in the archives. Their gravestones still stand in the churchyard. The iron ribs of wrecked ships can still be seen in the sand at low tide. And
I think that was timed so perfectly with, like, the little, like, transition between the images that, like, it kind of gave my body a little jolt. I'm like, what?
To contain the explosions that claim the lives of many people are still scattered throughout the forest, now overgrown and silent, much as they have been for more than a century. Whether the forest is haunted in any literal sense is something no one else has really been able to prove. After generations of stories, investigations, and eyewitness accounts, the answer remains the same. No one truly knows. But as always, I like to break in here at the end.
You meant
so
to
again,
do that?
It's kind of like
Are you
harping
just saying
on
that
the
'cause it
same
worked
thing that I was
out?
saying a moment ago. When it comes to what life actually is, the problem is that we just can't perceive all of it, I guess is the best way to put it. Like there's
Yeah, I
visual
agree.
representations out there, right? Of like what would a fourth dimensional creature see a third dimensional creature as? What would we see a two dimensional creature as? What would an eighth dimensional creature
What would
see
they
a
see each
three
other
dimensional
as?
creature as? It's an interesting thought process because we don't really know if those things exist out there, right? It's just more of, again, a thought process. But one of the things that is always going to be interesting to me is a lot of times science will, in some ways, back the things that have been said earlier by earlier cultures. We just really didn't have it at that time. So, like, things that would appear as magic back then that maybe an earlier culture couldn't really understand
ban
is
me
not
from my
magic
own
to us
stream,
anymore.
Blazer?
It's just science. Once we understand.
What? What do you? You know what I would like to understand? Why we were interrupted so very rudely.
But as
That's
always,
why
I
would
like
like to
to break
understand.
in here at the end. So again, it's kind of like harping on the same thing that I was saying a moment ago. When it comes to
It's been
what
3 hours.
life
Oh
actually
God,
is,
yeah,
the
it has
problem
almost been
is
3
that
hours.
we just can't perceive all of
And
it.
this
I guess
wasn't
is the
even a
best way to
full
put it.
hour
Like there's
video.
visual representations out there, right? Of like what would a fourth
I wonder if
dimensional
we should
creature see a
still,
third dimensional creature as? What would we see a two dimensional creature as?
I wonder if we should still watch those other videos. Because those other videos, I think it's like an hour and 30 minutes. It is definitely a thought-provoking video. This is a really good video. We haven't finished. We still have a little bit to top it off. It looks like it's mostly just commentary before it goes into like supporters and stuff. But I still want to hear him like finish his thoughts. But yeah, no, this is a really good video. Like really well thought out, really well presented. He presented the history and then he gave us a hauntings and then he told us about like all of the theories, including the like whole like, previous information or like the priming, right? Wouldn't know you just got here? Don't worry, Blazer. It's fine. It's fine. You can always watch the VOD too. If you were curious. Or you can watch the video itself. We need to do a stream dedicated to this dude, because holy shit, this guy was presented good. I probably will do more of his videos in the future.
What would
when
an
we react to
eight-dimensional
videos.
creature see a
'Cause he seems
three-dimensional
pretty
creature
chill.
as? It's an interesting thought process because we don't really know if those
Is that
things
black and
exist
white?
out there, right? It's just
you
more
make
of,
my
again, a
emote
thought
black and
process.
white?
But one of the things that is always going to be interesting to me is a lot of times science will, in some ways, back the things that have been said earlier by earlier cultures. We just really didn't have it at that time. So like things that would appear as magic back then that maybe an earlier culture couldn't really understand is not magic to us anymore. It's just science. Once we understand it, it crosses from being an unknown and being magic, and ironically enough, being it has to be false, to now it just becomes something that we know, and because we know it, it obviously has always existed and it's just true.
Yeah.
It's kind of what I find interesting about the way the human brain works. Once things change,
Same.
it changes forever and it changes how we see it. So let's say everybody who was seeing ghosts out there or just random things it's true, right? Let's just say it's true and they saw exactly what they saw. Then with enough research, those things will just become normal. Those will become things that are to be expected. Of course, that would obviously completely alter and the way that we would view the afterlife and death and what happens to us would be completely different at that point, because that means humanity would have such a profound impact on the fabric of reality, not just like we could move things, but literally how reality itself reacts. That would completely change everything. But what I want to hear,
like,
I mean,
why is
there's
it so
probably
dark?
enough people
I wanna
watching
freaking
this
out
channel.
again.
Have you ever been to Pembrey County Park? I'm supposed to go to Europe
No,
in January.
I wanna
don't know
now.
if I'm going to go up to England or not, but I'm going to be in Europe.
I
so
kind of want to now,
I don't know. Maybe,
to be honest.
maybe while I'm there, I mean,
There was a lot of
how many
cool
more
scenes
opportunities
there
am
that I
I
was
going to
like,
get?
ooh,
I might go
I would
out
like
there,
to see that.
but I want to know: have you been out there? Because if you have you seen anything creepy? Do you think that this is real? For people who haven't been there, have you had any weird experiences? I don't know. It's just an interesting thing to talk about because, again, everything's always
I've had a
confirmed
lot of weird
fake and lame and
experiences.
not real, and then like something happens, it's like, oh yeah, it's always been like that.
None
So
of which
I
I
don't
can
know. I'm
ever
not
I
saying
could
one way
prove
or
or
another it
disprove, to
exists,
be
but I am
honest.
saying there's just things humanity doesn't understand. But anyhow, let me know down in the comments if you've ever experienced something weird out there. I'd love to read
You hear
that.
that, guys? Same for the YouTube. You guys experience anything unusual, anything paranormal? Hmm? Hmm? You guys didn't experience anything? Aside from me, Blazer. Aside from me, I don't count. But yeah, this was a really good video. I like this video. Yeah, no, listen. I my experiences were all relatively tame. There was it's only ever been like it's mostly been like feelings or like possible things that could have been because I was either sleep deprived or many other things, but at the same time like it was very distinct because I hear shit all the time, guys. I do. Like I unfortunately I have that part of anxiety where it's like you occasionally have the auditory hallucinations where it sounds like, someone's calling you or you hear a very specific sound, and normally it's a sound that just instills a little bit of anxiety in you, right? So I get those. And so normally I feel like most of the time at least, I feel like I have a pretty good grasp on what is happening in my head and what isn't happening in my head. I feel like I have a good grasp on it. Feel. That's a key word, feel, not actually positive. So I feel like I know when something weird is happening and when I'm just like imagining something, when something's just happening in my head because I'm paranoid about something. So I was just imagining Boke in court for fraud. A lawyer goes, "Your Honor, my client pleads oopsie daisies. She didn't know how to do the exploiter orb because Brian did not explain it properly." You know what? You know what, Brian? I will say, I don't think that was entirely your fault. I think genuinely that it was a mixture between it what it like it was being explained during like, in a Twitch chat, right? And on top of that, like, there's a lot going on at once. So it's also kind of a skill issue on my part as well. I think that, kind of all parties are to blame for that. I'm gonna be honest. Does waking up with human bite marks in places I can't reach count as weird? Um, yeah, especially if you live alone. Yeah. Well, I mean, even if you don't live alone, I think that's still weird. It may not be haunted, but I think that's still weird. Because think about it this way, you have a roommate that's just randomly biting like places you can't reach. I mean, I feel like that's kind of weird, you know? It may not be like haunting, it's not like no ghost, but like that's still kind of weird. This was like 10 years ago. Do you have siblings? Out of curiosity.